I'd like to call this meeting of the Coventry Town Council to order at 6:04 PM. Clerk, please take the roll.
Councilmember Brown, Councilmember Pasqua, Councilmember Capaldi.
Here.
President Lima,
Here.
Vice President Verducci.
Here.
Councilmember LeBlanc.
Here.
Councilmember Copley.
Here.
Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. In the event of an emergency, those present this evening can exit outdoors labeled number 1 or 2 in the back of council chambers to the back parking lot or front lawn of Town Hall. Moving to meeting minutes from prior meetings, we have 5 sets this evening. October 8th, 2024, open and executive session minutes. October 22nd, open session. November 12th and 25th, executive and open session. Do I have a motion to take the minutes as a block?
A motion.
Motion by Councilman Capaldi.
Second.
Second by Councilman Brown. Any discussion? Hearing none, clerk, please take the roll.
Councilmember Brown,
Yes.
Councilmember Pasqua, Councilmember Capaldi,
Yes.
President Lima,
Yes.
Vice President Verducci,
Yes.
Councilmember LeBlanc,
Yes.
and Councilmember Copley.
Yes.
And now moving to, do I hear a motion to approve the minutes of October 8th, open and executive session, October 22nd, open session, and November 12th, 25th, open and executive session? I'm sorry, November 12th, executive session, November 25th, open session.
So moved.
Motion by Councilman Brown,
Second.
second by Councilman Capaldi. Any discussion? Madam Clerk, did you receive any edits?
Yes, I received a couple edits from yourself.
And those edits have been made?
The ones from the 25th have, not the one that you just gave me this evening.
Okay. Any further discussion? Hearing none, clerk, please take the roll.
Councilmember Brown,
Yes.
Councilmember Pasqua, Councilmember Capaldi,
Yes.
President Lima,
Yes.
Vice President Verducci,
Yes.
Councilmember LeBlanc,
Yes.
Councilmember Copley.
Yes.
Moving on to public hearings and public comment on docketed items only. At this time, we'll entertain public comment on items only on our docket this evening. We'll go to council chambers first. Please come to the podium and state your name and address for the record. We have new audio equipment this evening. Before, you had to turn the switch on and off. This one, you just press it and when it's green, it means it's on. When it's red, it means it's off. So if anyone would like to come forward to the podium, just state your name and address for the record. Make sure the microphone is on.
Much nicer. Good evening. Steve Riley, 5 Osprey Drive in Coventry, Rhode Island. I was here 2 weeks ago, and I had provided a letter. We didn't have a full house here. It's nice to see a full complement in 2025 because we have quite a bit of fiscal stuff to address. And I'm just want to express my debt of gratitude for you guys electing to do your public service and represent the town. So thank you. I was here 2 weeks ago and I identified some concerns related to Johnson's Pond where I thought that the pond members were getting potentially the short end of the stick. And the letter that I provided didn't really provide any recommendations or comments. So I took it upon myself to kind of revise that a little bit, and I've provided you another letter tonight. But why am I here? Years ago, John Asselone began some commentary online when the sale took place, talking about the new owners wanting a pond for $1 gazillion and all sorts of stuff. And you know the shenanigans that have evolved since. But back then, I asked a very simple question. Why did the shareholders of Quidneck Reservoir Company sell Flat River Reservoir if it was such a gold mine? And basically, my efforts since in this research have been to answer that question. So having said that, let me just say, I get it. My research, I provided that to you previously, not necessarily the new members of the council, but it's available on Save the Pond. But I provided that to you, and with the shareholders, it's a very simple thing. If it was worth that much, these were very shrewd businessmen with the mills recently, and they would have monetized it, in my opinion. So I get it why the legislature, I've addressed these concerns to the legislature, the Attorney General's office, the governor. Everybody has been silent to me, in part because during most of my letters to them, there was an ongoing federal case, and their response was, well, we can't do anything, comment on that while the case is going on. Subsequent to that, only one has answered me, and that was the Senate Oversight Chairman, Mark McKinney, who basically said, well, we're not going to investigate it because we don't feel that the Oversight Committee is the appropriate vehicle to address it, because we feel that it is a property issue, and if you have a problem, then you should be taking it to the courts. So basically, I get it. The Attorney General's office back in May of 2023, 2 lawyers met with me, sat down, listened to all my information, and then proceeded. I haven't heard any response out of the Attorney General's office. So, and I get it. From a state standpoint, any acknowledgement that there was a problem with this in how the state dealt with it would require accountability and action on their part. And if you see some of the stuff online that's going on with the state, DOT, Washington Bridge, you know, the business with the health data breach, you know, it's an overworked Attorney General's office, understaffed. I get it. So with that in mind, what I don't get is why you folks, as the town council, have not accepted at least the premise that Johnson's Pond was created under public use doctrine for economic development. With that given, seems to me that the town could go before the judiciary in this ongoing condemnation case and ask for an explanation or a position from the court, which in my estimation, based upon the history and the facts that I've assembled, would clearly establish that it was public use. Now, what does that mean? Well, when the sale took place, there in the fashion of how the pond was created, there are 60% of people in the area of the current condemnation area that granted flowage rights only. This is back in the 1800s now. And from English common law, I'm not going to go into the details, riparian rights, these follow with the successive owners. So in 2020, these easements became overburdened. I'd have to defer to our solicitor to discuss the ramifications of that, but when the town condemned it as private property in June, they didn't do anything to change these flowage easements. So they're still overburdened, and which is why I think getting a clarification from the judiciary would, in fact, go a long way to helping the town with the public use development of Johnson's Pond. So that's basically the big item that I'd like to say is, what satisfies the public use requirement? And the judiciary is generally the one that addresses that, not the legislature. They can say what they think, but the judiciary in our scheme of things is the way to go. So I've talked about the flowage right easements. The other thing that bothers me greatly about this is that back in 1982, the General Assembly approved the amendment changing the status of the charter of Quidneck Reservoir Company from a quasi-public or body corporate in politic to a closed C corporation. And they did this noting in the House Journal log, it is the understanding of the House that this act is passed after notification that an agreement has been reached for the protection of the residents of the affected area and the town of Coventry. And if you look at that House Journal log, you'll notice that Frank Sherman, he's got a pond access name for him, and John Asselone seconded it. And I'd like to express a debt of gratitude to John Asselone, because if you read some of the PV Times articles back during that time, he was adamantly in support of protecting the pond's rights through this process. And I'm going to say it was thanks to him that we have this one little excerpt in this House Journal log, but go beyond that. And what were these protections? They certainly weren't enforced in 2020 when the pond got sold. And so there again, I think there's some culpability there on the part of the legislature. I remind you, this is legislation, law that's put forth by the legislature. So the final point I'd like to make on this business, and I think the whole reason that the town condemned Johnson's Pond was the amount of flack they were getting from the shenanigans and people waking up and looking out in their backyard and seeing a mud flat. So there was a lot of pressure on you folks to take action. I appreciate that you did. However, I think we need to go one step further in terms of establishing what this pond was when it was sold. And I think you'll find that there is some responsibility on the part of the legislature for that. So going one step further, if I can just talk, I also mentioned in there about you folks taking the steps to task the Coventry Redevelopment Agency with determining what is the public use. And I wasn't able to make the November meeting. I hear there's a meeting tomorrow night, but there's going to be a presentation by GZA, Geo Environmental, who I assume is part of the team of professionals that were assembled based upon the Q&A that took place back in July to deal with this public use. I'm just, the redevelopment agency as the vehicle or the people that should be doing this is, to me, a questionable agency to be doing the task. It's, if you look at the Rhode Island general laws, the redevelopment agencies were established by the state for all cities and towns back in the 1950s to deal with blighted and I forget the word. Thank you, Madam President. If I could just say, the appropriate way to be doing this is through the Planning Commission and the comprehensive plan that is established by the town. But if I could just take a second to talk about some of the things. Briar Point Beach. Solicitor Angell back at the Q&A session when they spoke about dam districts said, well, you know, we're looking at that, but you know how the town has, you know how the town's situation is developed with fire districts, kind of connotating a negative influence. If I could just draw your attention to Briar Point, between January 2020 through November 2024, there were 451 police calls to the Briar Point site. I don't know the specifics of what they were. This is just the general information that open records gives you. But to me, that's an attractive nuisance. So if you go to the comprehensive plan, what they say about it, fishing, boating, and beach access, Tioga Lakes, Briar Point Beach is a public beach, providing public swimming, bird watching, and fishing. The beach is maintained and managed by the Department of Parks and Recreation. Since 2020, due to the lack of funding and staff, restrooms, facilities have been closed and people can swim at their own risk. Under needs, the town of Coventry has many recreational amenities and programs in town for public enjoyment, but struggles with facilities maintenance, programming gaps. The department.
Excuse me, Mr. Riley.
Yes.
I'm trying to work with you here. I've given you close to 10 minutes. We just have others that want to make public comments. So if you could just, in closing,
Okay.
a lot of latitude as well in terms of how this relates to docketed items. So
In closing, I would say that the town has not demonstrated their ability to safely and adequately manage beaches. So doing something with Johnson's Pond that involves a beach, I think, is going to be suspect. The state, Beach Pond State Park, which had a beach and a pavilion in 2007, 2008, they closed it because they could not operate it safely. So I would just say whatever action the town takes, you have to be very careful about letting the genie out of the bottle because you have property values that form a very significant aspect of the town's revenue for waterfront access versus water view on Johnson's Pond. And if you harm that, who knows?
thank you, Mr. Riley.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Tom.
My name is Tom Pendergast. I live at 6 White Rock Road in Coventry, Rhode Island. I'm the Vice President of the Upper Dam Pond Conservation Association. I'm also the Secretary on the Board of Directors for Save the Lakes, Rhode Island, and I'm a member of the Coventry Conservation Commission. So I'm going to talk a little bit about history as well, so I appreciate history, so thank you very much for that. So just as an introduction, I want to be sure everybody knows about Breezy Lake, where it is and what it stands for. So the Upper Dam Pond Conservation Association is an all-volunteer nonprofit organization. We're a 501c3. We're dedicated to the restoration and preservation of Breezy Lake. We protect the biologic diversity and the natural beauty of the lake for present and future generations. Upper Dam Pond, if you don't know, is in the northeast corner of Coventry. It's 23 acres in size. It's not huge, but it's important. It's within the Patuxent River watershed. It's owned by the town of Coventry, and it can be accessed by the public at 2 locations, one at a town beach and 2 at a public picnic area. These 2 sites and the lake are maintained by the Upper Dam Pond Conservation Association. So, to history, once upon a time. So once upon a time, Breezy Lake was deep. Once upon a time, it was clean. Once upon a time, there were water skiers there. Now the lake is in danger of filling in and becoming a marsh. It's an all too familiar story about lakes in Rhode Island and their decline from neglect by the state, town governments, but also local communities. In the 1960s, Coventry envisioned what they called Pleasure Park. It was a town beach on Breezy Lake with parking, walking trails, and access to Middle Dam Pond, once upon a time. So I'm here to talk about 2025-08, and I see complications in 3 areas. The first is ARPA, the second is access, and the third is abatement, and I want to talk about each one. So I'm sure everybody has read the ARPA rules, but the ARPA rules state that funds can be used for lake infrastructure projects. There is no mention of weeds at all. As a matter of fact, if you look at the documentation, the words weed, lake, abatement, and aquatic invasive species don't show up in the documentation at all. The word that does show up is infrastructure. So in October of 2022, I stood before this council and I asked for ARPA funds for lake infrastructure work on stormwater control systems. That stormwater would control the water in Upper Dam Pond and significantly reduce the inflow of phosphorus, which is causing the weed problem, into the lake. That recommendation that I made was denied. Public access. As I stated, Upper Dam Pond Conservation Association's mission is to return Upper Dam Pond to a condition that can be enjoyed by the many neighborhoods that surround it. It was in danger of becoming a marsh. That means public access for swimming at the beach, use of canoes, kayaks, and paddleboards, and the ability to fish. Town allocation of any funds for lakes, ARPA or not, must accomplish all 3 goals with the awareness of environmental justice. Number 3, weed abatement. Just so that you know, Upper Dam Pond, 23 acres, it costs us $400 an acre to treat. We maintain the weeds in Upper Dam Pond every year. We've done it for the past 4 years in a row. Flat River Reservoir is 600 acres or more. That's $240,000 to do a similar thing that they do in Upper Dam Pond every year. So I asked the question, what is the $35,000 for? Understanding that lakefront owners treat their own coves there and they spend a lot of money there, they should also pay for the remainder of the reservoir. The other 3 associations receive no funding from the town and they maintain their lake through various activities without help from the town. So what's the solution? In my opinion, the town council and directors need to be more collaborative with lake associations. Let's start there. We all need to be talking together. The town council should also seek guidance from the Coventry Conservation Commission. Coventry Conservation Commission did not know anything about this resolution before it came tonight. ARPA funds are for intended use to repair lake infrastructure for public access and restoration, not for weed control. Get creative on the short-term problem. I have said short-term problem, long-term problem. Short-term, get the weeds out of the lake. Completely agree with that. You have to get the weeds out of the lake or you can't use the lake for any purposes. Use association funds through membership, dues, fundraising, and donations. I think Upper Dam Pond Conservation Association shows the light there and leads in that process. And push for more state funding and grants. But what this council needs to be thinking about is not the short-term problem, it's the long-term problem. The long-term strategy is to install filtration systems to trap the phosphorus before it gets into the lake in the first place. This will gradually reduce the weeds because it reduces their food supply, and then will reduce the cost of weed abatement. They go hand in hand. In December, I met with the Planning Commission. They were very much in favor of looking at long-term solutions to stormwater runoff. We are piloting one with the town this spring after receiving funding from SNEP. And finally, my personal opinion, the opinion of the 50 members at Upper Dam Pond Conservation Association, I would vote no today to the resolution. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pendergast.
Evening, Jerry Narkowitz, 21 Beach Street, Coventry, Rhode Island. I could reiterate so many things that other people have said. I don't really want to do that because I don't think it's necessary. I think you all here, as a member of the Lake Tioga Association, I'm president of that association. I also sit on the Conservation Commission. To treat weeds in one water body, but not all the water bodies, just seems to be conflicted in what should be done in a town. So I get Johnson's Pond, I saw it as 660 acres. Lake Tioga is 225. We spend 6,000 a year on weed abatement. Breezy Lake is 23 acres. They spend about 9,000. We've been treating and paying for it for 15 years, maybe longer, through grants, fundraising. We have 2 public boat launches. We have public beach, public parking for 60 cars. We have a playground. We have bathrooms. We have a causeway where there's private fishing lessons given. One individual just seems to be so dedicated, and he just has fishing poles all over the place, and it's just impressive when you think about it, that he just does that. We have businesses located right on Lake Tioga, which gives it a view as an entrance into the town of Coventry that, discussions I've had with the town, we can make this a beautiful spot. And it is a beautiful spot. And we've done a good job to maintain it. So when you see something like this resolution tonight, it's distressing. I don't know how else to say it. Being a past math teacher, I decided to do a ratio analysis just to see what it would be if you're giving $35,000 to Johnson's Pond, and you just use the size of the acreage, that would mean you'd give somewhere about $12,000 to Lake Tioga every year, and you'd give about $1,200 to Breezy Lake. And if you add those all up, that's $50,000 a year to treat these lakes. How much it would treat it, I'm not sure. But if you think about in 10 years' time of treating with that amount of money, that'd be $500,000. I'm not sure the town has that kind of money to spend on weed treatments. But for sure, if you vote to approve something like this. Please vote to approve it for all the lakes, not just Johnson's Pond. It is so distressing to read that today. And I'm here tonight to make sure that I'm hoping you vote no. I'm hoping you vote no. And we continue to work with our grants that we get from the state and fundraising that we do. So I'm going to leave it at that. I'm not going to talk any longer. I think you've all heard enough. So thank you very much. Thanks for being patient. You guys have a great night.
Thank you, Mr. Narcoitz. Any members of the public?
Excuse me. Mark Lemoy, 34 Island Drive, Coventry, president of the Johnson's Pond Civic Association. So while I respect what my friends have said, I think there's a little bit of misunderstanding. We're not asking for this funding for each and every year. So just to clear something up, Johnson's Pond Civic Association, through grants and also funding and fundraisers, have treated for weeds for dating back to 2010, 2012. And prior to that, private residents have also chipped in and treated their own areas. We were prevented from treating for the past 3 seasons due to legal action by Social Holdings Company. They were going to sue the not only the Civic Association, but the town of Coventry and also the company, the lake management company that performs the treatments. So all the town of Coventry went to court in 2022. The solicitor filed for a temporary restraining order to allow the treatments to take place. And that was given up in court due to the fact that the water was lowered so low that treatment could not occur. So the TRO was dropped. So we're looking for this $35,000 to bring it back under control, a one-time thing, not a year after year type budget concern. We have not been able to treat for 3 years. So if the town has little league fields, and for whatever reason, if they have 3 little league fields and one of the little league fields for 3 years they couldn't cut the grass, well, it's going to take some extra effort, time, money to bring that under control, to cut that grass and to manicure the field. And that's kind of where we're coming from, is we need to get back to normal. And we've consulted with our lake scientists, and I believe they're going to be on a Zoom meeting to explain why the past 3 years, shallow water levels, as well as lack of treatment, that this year we do need more treatment than we usually do. So what have we done with the Civic Association has taken our grants that we get every year, state grants that we get every year, and we turned it over to the town of Coventry, to the community, not the town of Coventry, to the community. We've purchased for the Central Coventry Fire Department a underwater drone and retrieval roving mechanism. We've purchased repair material for the fire department's docks. We've purchased buoys for the spillway, navigation buoys, warning of dangers, to keep people away from the spillway. We've purchased a fire pump that went on the fire boat. This was all due to the fact that we couldn't spend our grant money on the invasive weeds that we usually are able to take care of. So we obviously, the Civic Association is in support of this one-time resolution to appropriate money so that we can get the weeds a little bit under control. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lemoy. Are there any members of the public here in chambers for public comment? Just state your name and address for the record, please.
Diane Cowell, 97 Mohawk Street. I have been listening to everyone. I live on Tioga. My thing is equity, and the fact that to give money to one lake that has needs, all 3 lakes that are owned by the town have equal needs. The weeds on Lake Tioga are treated every year, and they're by no means under control. And we should spend additional money every year, but we don't have it. We do the best we can with what we have. So just please be equitable with your decisions. I would encourage you to vote no. But if you vote yes, please try to be equitable. Thank you.
Anyone else in chambers? Anyone on Zoom, Cody? Unmute yourself and just state your name and address for the record, please.
Good evening. My name is Ray Horbert, 21 Dixie Road. I've been a member of the Tioga Lake Association for around 10 years. I'm here tonight to express my concerns about a troubling inconsistency in how the town prioritizes its public lakes compared to its treatment of Johnson's Pond. Tioga Lake is a valuable public resource with 2 public boat ramps and a town-operated beach, complete with bathroom facilities and a playground. In the past, this beach was properly staffed along with lifeguards, creating a safe and welcoming space for residents. However, since 2020, the town has ceased staffing the park, closed the bathrooms, and replaced them with a single porta potty. This decline in maintenance has led to the beach being overrun by out-of-town visitors who do not treat it with respect, resulting in countless police calls. When we inquired about this, we were told there was not enough funding to maintain these basic services. Fast forward to today, and we see a very different story unfolding with Johnson's Pond. The town recently acquired land surrounding the pond, incurring legal fees and committing to developing meaningful public access, which is something that should have happened long ago. While I support the town's decision to acquire this land, it's clear that public access was only provided because there was no other option. If the town could have acquired the land without offering access, I truly believe Coventry residents would not be getting the rightful access they deserve. Adding to my concerns, tonight's agenda includes a resolution for the $35,000 to treat invasive weeds at Johnson's Pond. This, along with the funds already spent on land acquisition and legal fees, makes one thing clear. There is money available for our public water resources when the town chooses to prioritize them. Unfortunately, that same support has never been extended to Tioga Lake. The Lake Association has received no financial assistance from the town to address invasive weeds in the past. We've had to rely solely on fundraising efforts and legislative grants to protect our lake. It's disheartening to see a public town lake and its amenities neglected, while a pond with historically limited public access seems to receive endless financial and strategic attention. This is a matter of fairness and proper stewardship of the town's resources. Our existing public lakes deserve the same investment and care as Johnson's Pond. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else on Zoom? Going once, twice, 3 times? Public, oh, we got one hand up. Unmute yourself and state your name and address for the record, please.
Yes, this is Colin Goslin of Water and Wetland. Can everyone hear me okay?
Sorry, what was that?
It was Colin Goslin from Water and Wetland.
I think you're later in the agenda. This is just
Oh,
public
okay.
comment.
Oh, sorry.
I mean, you can comment now, so. All right, you can comment now if you'd like, Mr. Goslin. You unmute yourself? Mr. Goslin? All right, we'll move on.
Oh, yeah. Oh, sorry. Here, I'm here.
Okay. You're welcome to speak now or later, when this is actually the topic of discussion.
Okay. I mean, if I can speak now, I wouldn't mind.
Sure.
Okay. So, yep, this is Colin Goslin, Water and Wetland. I've worked with Johnson Pond for about 10 years, doing the aquatic management for the invasive species, both fanwort and milfoil. So before, the lake had been shut down, we'd had a pretty good control of the fanwort and milfoil. changing areas of treatment. Some areas where, high use areas and whatnot. But due to not doing anything for the past few years, the areas have expanded greatly. Combined with the lack of treatments and especially the low water, the sunlight has penetrated and been able to move the plants, outward into the channels. So, the area of the plants have greatly increased. We haven't been out there to do a survey, but I'd guess it's doubled since we last treated. So we strongly recommend that the board approves the funds. So we can get out there, treat, and hopefully get the Johnson's Pond back where it was about 3 years ago.
Thank you. Last call, public comment. Just unmute yourself and state your name and address for the record, please. Hello? Stacy?
Steve Nichols from 159 Lewis Farm Road. I just want to say that I think there needs to be equity in how money is spent on weed abatement in the ponds. I have a history in environmental management, and while I appreciate the advice just provided on weed abatement, I also know that lowering water levels is a way of controlling invasive species in ponds, and the person speaking is going to get paid to remove the weeds in the pond, which is why he wants you to approve the money. I think we need to have more transparency and open conversation about how money at Johnson's Pond is being spent. I think there's a lot of ill will in the town because of how things have happened with the lack of communication to people in the town, and that it is not fair to approve the spending tonight without giving taxpayers an opportunity to consider how else these funds could be allocated to improve everybody's lives in town, as there is currently no plans, as far as I know, for public access on Johnson's Pond. That's all.
Thank you. Public comment going once, twice, 3 times. Public comment is now closed. Moving on to licenses. Item A, new application by Christopher J. Rich for private detective license, pages 35 to 36 in your packets. Do I hear a motion to approve the application?
Motion.
Motion by Vice President Verducci, second by Councilman Brown. Discussion, Manager Perillo. Any discussion by the council? Hearing none, clerk, please take the roll.
Councilmember Brown?
Yes.
Councilmember Pasqua? Councilmember Capaldi?
Yes.
Councilmember LeBlanc?
Yes.
Councilmember Copley?
Yes.
Vice President Verducci?
Yes.
President Lima?
Yes.
7 in the affirmative, 0 in the negative, motion passes.
Item B, new victualling license, The Pizza Nomad, 718, 720 Center of New England Boulevard. This is on pages 37 to 38 in our packets. Do I hear a motion to approve the license?
Motion to approve.
Motion by Councilman Brown, second by Councilman Pasqua. Any discussion on the license? Manager Perillo, any comments? Any further discussion from the council? Hearing none, clerk, please take the roll.
Councilmember Brown?
Yes.
Councilmember Pasqua? Councilmember Capaldi?
Yes.
Councilmember LeBlanc?
Yes.
Councilmember Copley?
Yes.
Vice President Verducci?
Yes.
President Lima?
Yes.
7 in the affirmative, 0 in the negative, motion passes.
Moving to report of the town manager, Mr. Perillo has 4 items this evening.
So in your packets, there is a contract renewal for our grant writer, Lisa Andoja. She's present here tonight. to kind of give you a synopsis on what she has done so far in her time here in Coventry. Attached to her contract is the funds that she has secured for the town of Coventry, along with some funds that are still pending per some continuing resolutions that she can explain. So I present Lisa to give you guys an update as to where we are and some future asks on our behalf.
Thank you very much, Mr. Perillo. Good evening. My name is Lisa Andoja of Rosewood Consulting. It's been an absolute pleasure to have all hands on deck this past year and raise funding, new sources of revenue for some really major development projects. I believe you have the list of grants secured to date. Today was an alarming morning for most of us, right, when the news actually hit that federal funds were being halted and they were being paused. By 8:15, I was on the phone with two members of Senator Reed's office. Senator Reed, as we know, is the senior senator who sits on appropriations. I spoke with both Mr. Albert and Ms. Arcand. Early in the morning, they said that the Office of Management and Budget actually passed an executive order to halt all federal funds that funded DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. What was exempt, in case you're getting calls from constituents, exempt was Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, Head Start, and SNAP. By the end of the day, tonight at 5:36, I got another email from Ms. Arcand, which I'll share with everyone, saying that basically a federal judge has temporarily blocked the executive order until February 3rd for further study. Our Attorney General, Peter Nerona, actually joined 23 Attorney Generals to take a similar action, questioning, is it lawful and is it constitutional? So, like anything else, it's a new administration. We have turbulence. And speaking with Mr. Perillo today, I said, what I would suggest is what we do is we identify funding that is available, we play on. That's my attitude. You just play on with a very optimistic attitude, go after the low-hanging fruit. We know it's not federal funds for the month of February that we're going to be pursuing, but what I will share with you is I'm applying for a grant tomorrow, actually, with the Office of Public Safety. It's for 2 federal SUVs. That's for JAG funding. CDBG will be another source of funding late February. And then there's also a cybersecurity grant that is available throughout the municipality for all departments, including police, fire. And that's where we are. As soon as I have information, we know this is going to continue to evolve. My personal opinion is it's a new administration. Be out of the deal. You got cabinet members that have to go before the Senate. Every single member of Congress we know has pet projects in their district. So this is a bipartisan issue. And I think it's only a matter of time before it's resolved. I can share with you that the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, on Friday said that he was actually going to be taking up the continuing resolution that was stalled where we had our 3 earmarks in there. He was going to be taking that up the week of February the 10th. The Senate was going to be taking it afterwards. I expect this is going to be resolved by the 27th, if not sooner. But as soon as I have any information, I'm on speed dial to Mr. Perillo. I send emails to him and the President, and if you could circulate it to members of the council, I'd be appreciated.
Any discussion for Ms. Sandoja? Questions? Manager Perillo? Oh, sorry. Councilman Brown.
It's much appreciated. Thank you.
It's an actual pleasure to work actually with your town manager and the administration. They're a breath of fresh air, and all we do is look for the wins. And just the new sources of revenue for major development projects, that's really what it's about, to be able to do more and get it off budget and free that funding up for other projects. Thank you. But
Well, we certainly appreciate it. Thank you.
thank you, sir.
Can you talk about what are the major themes in terms of what funding is available for, or you're seeing a lot of grant opportunities for, just to share with the council kind of you know, when we're looking for opportunities to fund things. Because I talked to you about some of the needs that we have, and it doesn't always align with all the grant opportunities that are out there.
Every single year, there's different priorities that'll get funded. We know that federal grants will be dictated by the federal administration. The state has their own priorities that are completely different. One area right now that's halted, but it's been a major area of new revenue, has been the bipartisan infrastructure bill. And that's all stormwater runoff projects, that is infrastructure projects, climate resiliency projects. That's one area that's very heavily funded. Anything dealing with green, the inclusion of green infrastructure to reduce flooding is another one. Dam restoration, we're seeing funding come through for dam restoration. EPA has a lot of funding for lead pipe replacement for low-income households to do it on the private side. There's also funding there for lead paint. CDBG, it's any project within a low to moderate area that is eligible, or any senior services, any senior programs, if you need any upgrades for deferred maintenance or capital improvements to the senior center is an eligible expense. We looked at private foundations as well. So private foundations like the Champlain Foundation, Rhode Island Foundation, even Rhode Island Health and Education Building Corporation will have funding opportunities. And that is anything relative to schools or a community asset. So there's going to be funding there. Energy efficiency is another area, actually, all your municipal buildings. There's been a lot of funding for the police department. So that'll continue to be funded. We did have a couple of opportunities with public safety, but it was a 50% match for fire departments. So with each grant opportunity that comes out, I'll actually forward it to the town manager and have a very thoughtful conversation. What are the priorities? Talk about the match. Talk about are there any community partners? And then work with the administration. But thank you for that question. It was very thoughtful.
Councilwoman Capaldi.
Is there a way that, I don't know if the town manager has a listing, but the council doesn't have, you just rambled a whole bunch of stuff off. I would like to see, do you have a website? Do you have something that you would give us that we could see the evolving grants that are available and where they're concentrated? Because, you know, we may be thinking of something that these could help with.
Sure, that's a great question. What I do is streamline it. As you can imagine, it's more effective to streamline it because everyone has different priorities. So what I'll do is I will actually send out the grant opportunities to my client for them to actually make a decision. What I do, instead of sending the grant opportunities to every member of the council to streamline it, because sometimes you have under 30 days to respond, I actually do. Have you received this, the grant secured to date?
Yes.
That's something that I actually distribute regularly.
Well, we don't, I just saw it today for the first time. I've not seen it before. I think the transparency is really great for the council to be aware. And I wasn't asking you to give it to each council person. Give it to the town manager, and then maybe he can be transparent with us. That'd be great. Thank you.
The things as I get them from Lisa, I can forward them to you guys. Sure.
And I would welcome you, if you have any projects whatsoever that are important to you, is to actually put it in writing to the president or to Mr. Perillo so that we have it. More than happy to work on it. If you don't express it in writing, I don't know it's a priority, so we'll make it one to actually identify research for a potential grant opportunity.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
So Dan, we have a potential contract renewal for ratification on. So this is for a 1-year contract like the last one? Okay. Discussion from the council on the contract. Councilwoman Capaldi.
In the contract, unless I missed it, is there an amount, a fee of what we're being charged or what we're paying?
It's $5,000 per month, same as it was last year, no increase.
Any other questions, discussion from the council? Vice President Verducci?
Just for the other members of the council, I think it's important to realize how this conversation is going to relate to our other conversations. We've already seen it once here with the different watersheds and groups. You know, when we can communicate and coordinate those kinds of efforts, we have a lot better chance of, you know, then coordinating on our side with the grants team. So just another option for everybody to know. And then on the fiscal side of the house for us, the way this needs to coordinate as well. Each one of these efforts is going to constitute a need in programs to get information up the ladder and follow up and report and things like that. So just to connect all the dots here, it's great to go for more money that will require more match, more personnel. So if that's the priority we want to take going forward, just something to keep in mind.
Do I hear a motion from the council? Oh, sorry. Solicitor Angell.
The monthly fee should be in the contract.
Is it? I thought it was in the contract.
Yeah, I didn't see it.
Yeah, we're all missing a page.
I can share with you relative to compensation, it's a monthly retainer, and that's inclusive of all business expenses, including business travel to Washington, DC.
I might make a copy, Dan, for everybody. Okay. Section 3, second page.
Also, it's already in the budget under a separate line item, so it's the same as last year. I can get it to you. My fault.
Make a motion to approve.
Oh, we have a motion to ratify the contract with Rosewood Consulting from Councilman Pasqua. Any, do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Councilman Capaldi. Discussion? Hearing none, clerk, please take the roll.
Councilmember Brown?
Yes.
Councilmember Pasqua? Councilmember Capaldi?
Yes.
Councilmember LeBlanc?
Yes.
Councilmember Copley?
Yes.
Vice President Verducci?
Yes.
President Lima?
Yes.
7 in the affirmative, 0 in the negative. Motion passes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Manager Perillo?
So the second item I have is a traffic safety discussion and the process on how that's going to happen with the council. And speaking to the chief, and he's here, he can speak for himself as well. It's always been the responsibility of traffic safety to hear a complaint, investigate the complaint, and then decide whether to put any kind of traffic control device into play. The recommendations prior to now had not gone to the council. It was basically a traffic safety function. It was brought up that the council wanted that authority to approve the recommendations from the Traffic Safety Committee. So I've included in the packet what they've done for the last 3 months. There was no meeting in December. And I think it's important just to kind of figure out the process on how you want the Traffic Safety Commission to function from this point forward.
Discussion from the council? So I think I've read through the memo. I appreciate it. Thank you, Chief. I understand the rationale behind using the MUTCD as a guide. What concerns me is I don't feel like I feel like we're so marred in the detail of policy that we're not exercising maybe basic, just common sense of where some of these signs should go. And I think who knows those better than a lot of us living in the community. I think I don't, and correct me if I'm wrong, I don't even think we have an audit or an inventory of all stop signs or yields in town.
The council approved 17,000.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. So, I think also what concerns me too is the rationale with the MUTCD guidelines of basically if a crash hasn't occurred there, then that means it's not dangerous, which I don't think I think everybody can agree that that's not the best rationale. I think specifically Coventry it's an old town. I think it's a town that's grown very fast, and I don't think that its traffic infrastructure has kept up with it. And I think that while it's great to have these kind of national or state measures to go by, there's that kind of common sense piece missing. I think I know you're not supposed to use stop signs to control traffic, but there's many instances in the eastern part of town where it's older, where roads terminate and there's no, and there's just an assumption that you should be stopping. And I don't think we can go under that assumption. So in my opinion, I think that we should still have them go through the traffic commission, but then I think they should be elevated to the council, what requests came through, and then the council can examine them from there.
All of them, or just the ones that traffic safety approves? You want everyone that they investigate to come forward, whether it's recommended or not, or just the ones that are recommended?
They don't recommend many.
Correct.
That's my point. We'd never see any if that was the case.
Basically, all that they investigate.
In my opinion, we've had discussions about establishing a licenses and safety services committee. They should be funneled through safety services in that committee. Let that subcommittee mar through those specifically and take off that grunt work from the town council. So then what comes to the town council has been flushed out from that perspective. And that committee is going to have council members on it. That's just my opinion. I'd be anxious to hear from my colleagues. Councilman LeBlanc.
I fully support and echo your comments. I think sometimes maybe a police study on a stop sign shows that a stop sign is not necessary. But I can tell you the street that I live on, it's Hazard Street, or next to Fairview. There's a stoplight at Fairview. People fly up Hazard Street. Multiple residents have requested stop signs on my street, and it's always come back that a stop sign's not necessary. But to my knowledge, there's about 8 to 10 people on this committee. We're spending a lot of payroll dollars. One stop sign costs, I think, $200. And it's common sense that people are trying to skip that light, fly up Hazard Street to get onto Fairview and miss the light. So I think just adding a simple stop sign would maybe make that street safer. And it would also appease people in my district. And I'm assuming that happens not only in my district, but others. So I fully support your comments.
Okay, so process-wise, traffic safety will forward all of their investigatory vetting to safety services. Safety services will then forward their recommendation to the council.
Solicitor Angell.
So as a matter of process, I mean, obviously, I've had a chance to look at the code, had a chance to work with the Chiefs Committee. Generally, how it works in other communities, whether you have a safety services committee or you don't, council people have the right to ordain that a traffic control device be placed at an intersection, for example, such as a stop sign. That's sort of a low-level control device in the sense that it doesn't cost very much, but it's high-level in the sense that it calls for a stop to traffic and to control the intersection. That has to be legislated. We've never done that in this town. We don't have a section in our code of ordinance that speaks to four-way stop signs. How do you enforce a four-way stop sign if there's no ordinance on point? In the past, I know with respect to the committee, they have approved traffic control devices. That's great, but they have no legal authority to impose the device. So while it becomes a mere suggestion to the driver as opposed to the law. Okay? So part of conversations and dialogue that I've had with the chief, his committee, and the town manager, once the study is completed, I'm going to create that part of your code of ordinances for single stop signs, two-way stops, three-way stops, four-way stops, traffic-controlled intersections on town roads, not state roads. And then on a go-forward basis, certainly organically recommendations can be generated from the committee and brought to the council under new business. It should be referred on from new business as a matter of procedure to the committee. Then when the subcommittee on safety services is done with it, it comes back to the council for approval or disapproval, much like I've seen in other communities, and I know that Manager Perillo has seen in other communities as well. That's the proper process. In the meantime, if, for example, Councilman Pasqua says, you know, we really need a stop sign at the end of this street, I know my district, then we design an ordinance that says amend this section of the Coventry Code of Ordinances to include a stop sign, and it becomes part of the code, and it's enforceable as such. Now, if the recommendation comes from the Chiefs Committee to the council, you still need an ordinance, okay? The council can say, nope, we don't think a traffic control device is warranted there. We appreciate your recommendation, won't do it. By the same token, a council person can propose an ordinance that says, I'd like to see a traffic control device at this intersection. This is what I think we need. And then it goes to the Chiefs Committee for his experts to weigh in on it. In larger cities and towns, they have traffic engineers. We don't have that. We have the expertise in-house in the police department that's more than adequate to do that. You do not have to accept the recommendation of the committee of experts who may come back and say, no, Councilman, your stop sign is not warranted at that intersection. You can say, well, I want one anyway, and the council votes on it and you get one. That's how it goes. When it comes to larger traffic control devices such as stoplights and flashing lights and things of that nature, those come with an expense. And while it may be warranted, a council person or persons may want it, the committee may agree with it, it would necessarily need to come with a fiscal note from finance and be planned and budgeted for it if it were an intersection controlled by light. Yes, I know it gets complicated. Welcome to a town that isn't, you know, that's more than 12,000 people. Right? You've got more roads than anybody. Mr. McGee knows that. He's fond of telling me. So that's generally how it should work. I know we're going to take up a matter later this evening about subcommittees of the council, but that's a general flow. It should be introduced as new business. Then the council can decide what it wants to do. Send it.
Councilman Capaldi.
Because I have the chief and the manager in the room talking about traffic safety, I think it'd be great for the audience to hear about the state roads and, you know, RIDOT, because I have 2 requests that went out to you guys several months ago, like in June. Well, I would like to know the process. I think the town should know the process of that. We can't use this time talking about traffic safety?
Not in general. We're talking about just traffic control devices coming.
On state roads. We can't talk about that?
I want
You want to save it, table it?
Or just, I would go to the manager.
Thank you.
Councilwoman, it's a matter of the meetings. The topic on the discussion is a broad one, not a specific one. Particular controlled.
I'm not trying to bust your chops. If you do go in the report, though, there's a whole section about the state ones and requests they've got on states. Yeah. Councilman Pasqua.
Just a quick clarification from Solicitor Angell. You had just mentioned that we needed an ordinance to enforce certain types of traffic control devices, like four-ways?
We don't have anything on the books.
So state traffic laws don't,
That's different.
okay.
That applies to state devices. Okay?
Yeah.
But if you have purely a four-way town intersection
Mhm.
and you have a stop sign at that intersection, this isn't like I'm giving away, the secret for how to get out of traffic.
Nobody's stopping for a stop sign tonight.
But the reality is they're unenforceable. There's not a law on the books that says or recognizes that town-imposed traffic device.
Any further discussion?
So Solicitor Angell, would you recommend that the Traffic Safety Committee wait to meet until that survey is done, establishing those 17, establishing the current stop signs?
No, I think we can begin work now and just begin to include things in those sections. I think we can do that, but it's a larger project, obviously.
Any further discussion on this item? Vice President Verducci.
Just got a question overall on the governance kind of structure here. Is this meant to only control citizen requested looks at traffic safety? I'm just thinking of future development, things like that. Whose purview are those traffic studies and then recommendations under? Do they also flow through this?
I don't think it's just citizen requested that goes to traffic safety. It's everything.
As long as it's a town road. Some of the newer developments are private, so there's no say in those.
If I may, to answer an implied question, when there's development in town, for example, parcel of land in center of New England that may be exiting their traffic out onto Hopkins Hill Road, it's a necessary component of the development plan that they do a traffic study, okay? That the planning department will peer review that traffic study, and there will be recommendations relative to traffic control devices. For example, and only by way of example, there is an entrance and an exit to center of New England Boulevard from Hopkins Hill Road. Well, as everyone is acutely aware, center of New England Boulevard doesn't connect from one end to the next. That's going to change in the next few months. And as a result of that, I've had direct conversations, more than conversations with the receiver. Need a traffic control device at Hopkins Hill Road, we're not paying for it. So, that's because that's what happens in development, right? That electronic traffic, they're expensive. I mean, just flashing lights at a crosswalk and all of that is a $20,000 bill. I've seen that in other communities. I don't expect that number's going down, right? So, although Mr. McGee seems to be able to get things for cheap money, I don't know how he does it, but yeah, I don't know. But in any event, I mean, that's where you would need your fiscal note. So it really is citizens, it's you folks, it comes from planning, it will come from planning relative to new projects.
Anything else? The next item, I don't think we have anything in our packet for that.
It came in after the deadline. So that this is the contract for Lake Tioga. Contract itself is very similar to the one the solicitors are familiar with regarding Johnson's Pond. But basically, we conducted a study of Lake Tioga and the gatehouse, the gate, the trash rack, the piping underneath the roadway, the inlet. All of it needs to be some replaced, some upgraded. We have done the due diligence of, again, having a diver go in there and document all the issues. We've talked to GZA and a contractor as to what it's going to take to get that gatehouse and infrastructure up and running. It's been in decline for numerous years. So what the contractor has suggested to us is a design build plan in which they design the solution up to how much money we have to spend. So currently, there's $700,000 aside for APA for infrastructure repair to Tioga Lake, and that's what the contract that I can send to everyone speaks to. Obviously, time is of the essence. 12/31/26 is the deadline, and we've got DEM approvals and DOT approvals to get because we're actually going underneath Tioga Avenue. So that's why that is on your docket this evening.
So we'll just wait till the next meeting. We don't have the contract. Okay. All right, we'll go to the next item.
Council wanted to discuss the finance positions that we currently have and what the need is going forward. So at one point, we were discussing a full-time purchasing agent and grant manager. That's what Director Civetti feels is would help his department and free him up to do some other things regarding the audits and the budget and assisting with the school on the school side. So this is on there to have that discussion to see what direction the council wants to go in. Right now, currently, there is no financing for a new position in the budget. Obviously, according to the solicitor, we can amend the budget to put that into it. So this is on here just for discussion as to how the council sees a new role in the finance department being filled.
You want to do general discussion on this? Anyone have discussion items? Councilman LeBlanc.
I just fully support our finance director getting additional support. As I believe everybody here and many watching this meeting, we are behind on our audits for various different reasons. And I do believe that our finance director works a ton of hours, definitely needs help. So I fully support it. I would just need to understand costs and how we're going to move forward that way. That's all.
So I originally looked at a full-time purchasing position, went to the average of the state to the League of Cities and Towns. The average is approximately $75,000 per year. This role that I foresee is more definitely purchasing, but also grant management. As you know, we probably have close to $10 million in grants right now. Mrs. Civetti is doing a lot of the financial reporting. Assistant Town Manager Maria Broadbent is doing a lot of the paperwork as well. Right now, each director does their own RFP, IFBs. So we'd like to concentrate that with one person. This way they're familiar with the state MPA list. They're out there writing the contracts with the solicitor, making sure we're getting the best deals. I've been told the state MPA is not necessarily the best way to go because those prices are kind of inflated because it's an easy process. So if we can do the deep dive and have a one-center person to handle all these requests and take that off all of the directors and centralize it, I think it would make it a lot easier.
Councilman LeBlanc.
Just to follow up with that, just from my own background in accounting, it's extremely important from a risk standpoint that we have somebody who is responsible for the grants, because if we spend money on anything and it doesn't abide by the grant rules, we actually owe it back. So knowing that we're continuously getting more and more grants, I think it's extremely prudent of us to get somebody who is responsible for that. So I fully support this.
Councilwoman Cabaldi.
I fully support it as well. I support what Mr. LeBlanc just said. So when this person takes over the role, will the director still be finding their own grants and doing all the whatever they got to do it, and then he'll just manage it as it comes in?
I think the way I see it is that a director that wants to look into a particular either a grant opportunity, obviously we have the grant writer, but if it comes more to an RFP or an IFB for Parks and Rec or for Director McGee, They filter that right down to the purchasing agent, and the purchasing agent takes that ball and runs with it, and now it's off the director's plate. Now the purchasing agent takes it from there to the end.
That's great because then it gives the directors more time to do what they have to do. Perfect.
Vice President Verducci.
Yeah, just a couple of things. I think, first of all, Mr. Civetti, everybody thinks you need help. Yeah.
You
Okay.
the boss.
What I've been hearing here is making me think, and I know this is a little counterintuitive given our financial status, but it may make sense to maybe increase this position a little bit and give them a wider berth. I would be more in favor of a true kind of backup, a deputy, a vice, just as in we have, an assistant town manager, we have obviously multiple people in the solicitor's department. I just hate to say it, but you got to kind of plan for those kinds of things. So I would actually be in favor of even a little bit higher salary to give somebody even more access to records, or, in the event of vacations, things like that. So I think maybe, if we look at the volume of procurements, if they're not such that it requires a full-time position, which it doesn't sound like we're doing only procurements, but just kind of thinking maybe someone who's also trained in the Keystone, or, things like that, where we could have a more of a true backup. So, we can talk money-wise, I think, but it may be better long-term to have a true backup. I mean, we're a $120 million company right now, and we've got a CFO with very little behind him at the moment as far as, actual number of personnel. So just something I wanted the council to consider. I, of course, support more help we can get, but sometimes it's easier to do this kind of thought at the beginning before you let the position out, because then you're kind of limited into the duties that are described in the posting. So just some food for thought on that topic.
Councilman Brown.
I support Vice President Verducci on that, and I just want to reaffirm when it came up last meeting that I was in favor of giving the treasurer more help. So I just want to reaffirm my support for this position in the treasurer's office.
Councilman Pasqua.
You can add me to that list. It's such an important role in the town, and obviously the consequences of not having enough people in that department are wide-reaching, and we're learning that. And also, touching base on grant management, one of the requirements of a lot of these big federal grants is audits on these grants. And if they're not submitted on time, and you may have to pay them back, or you won't be at the top of the list next time when you need something else from that agency. So, making sure that we submit all our stuff in a timely manner, we have the right manpower, and everybody's able to do this stuff, it puts us in the right area for these agencies that are helping us to begin with. And I want to maintain that good relationship. So I support Vice President Verducci's idea on a deputy finance director.
Councilman Capaldi.
I also support VP Verducci's, giving a little bit more money to this position and the responsibility. We don't want to put since I've been here, it seems like we do a lot of things half step or Band-Aids or whatever. Mr. Civetti's role is very important, and you do need a lot of help. Don't we all? So I think if we can step up the role a little bit to take on more responsibilities, I think that'd be perfect.
Solicitor Angell.
Just to piggyback on what Councilman Pasqua had to say, I know in my own experience in town with the finance director, just the opioid funds alone, those settlement funds, and I know that each settlement has its own provisions, and they have their own compliance portal, which they're not the same. And as I sit here, to be perfectly honest with you, without looking at my file, I don't know how many ones we have the luxury of several sources of money in the opioid area. But I know that Bob's the one that or somebody in finance has to physically go into those portals and report so that the compliance is where it needs to be. I can't imagine what that looks like. Only he could tell you.
Anyone else on the council? Just lastly, I do agree with expanding the scope of the position beyond just that narrow window. We have all of our financial eggs in the Bob Civetti basket. And if he gets hit by a bus, we're screwed. You can put that in the minutes, Joanne. And we shouldn't
But the
be,
traffic control device at that intersection is not enforceable.
yeah.
It won't affect the wrongful death claim.
Yeah. So I just, we've had that position in the past, and I do think we need that for many reasons. And I think the return on investment there is unquestionable. So yeah, I support giving more staff to that department, but I think we need to expand the scope of what the responsibilities would be and give it some weight.
So are we thinking Assistant Finance Director right now or starting July 1? What's the council's pleasure? And what, are we talking 100,000?
What gets me audits faster?
Neither.
Me?
Neither. Neither.
What?
Just from experience, it takes a lot of time bringing people up to speed. So if you want Bob's time focused on that, then the audits probably will get the back burner. So that's just my 2 cents, as you asked. Yeah. Oh, job description,
Yeah,
absolutely.
we can do that stuff
Hiring
now, yeah.
is what I was.
I mean, I think there's 3 or 4 municipalities now looking for finance directors. There's no one out there. I mean, there's no one out there. So, because the criteria for an assistant finance director is going to be the same as a finance director, just with less experience, really. So we'll start putting it together, and then we'll keep you guys in the loop. Thank you.
Vice President Verducci.
Just wondering if we can put in a request to maybe state municipal affairs or somebody to give us maybe a rundown of the other staffing in finance departments, just a quick check to see what, if they have a deputy or a backup, and maybe roundabout what the salary is proportionate to the size of the town, something like that. Thank you.
And what a great segue to report of finance director.
All right, don't get hit by the bus. Yeah, so just for one comment on that, I appreciate the comments that were made, but I do want to say the team that we have in finance right now is an excellent team. I have a great group of people that work there. We recently hired a new payroll administrator slash staff accountant, so it's an individual that does have an accounting degree. Been working in the accounting profession for, I think, 3 or 4 years now, so has some experience, and obviously where we were when we came in, back in January of 23, when I walked in the door, to where we are now, we've come a long way. I know the audits are not completed, but just getting to the point we're at where, you can look at some of the numbers. We have real-time numbers right now. So there's items that go into getting the audits done versus making sure you're getting accurate financial, statements when I'm presenting a report to you, whether it's monthly, quarterly, or what have you. So I don't want everybody to think that we're far behind. We're far behind on the audits, getting closer. I expect to have that issued shortly. But internally, day-to-day operations, everything's recorded. Your cash receipts are up to date. Entries, bank accounts are getting reconciled. So again, that's the only way I would give you reports that we're about to look at. We're going to want to make sure that the numbers you're getting are accurate or fairly stated. So with that said, in your packet, you did have a budget versus actual statement for the 6 months ended December 31st, 2024. Provided you with some highlights, a couple little typos that I'll correct as I go through this. But where we stand, obviously, 6 months through, 50% of the budget. Actual revenues represent 53.35% of the budget. So our current revenues are exceeding the budget estimates. And some of the highlights there. The town clerk and the municipal court revenues trending slightly higher. Currently, we're at 62.3%, so positive outlooks there. The treasurer's office revenue line items, we're currently 136% of the budget. We've done a good job as far as trying to invest the idle funds so that we're getting higher rates of return, or getting higher investment income, based on the interest rates by investing in various CDs and sweep accounts. State tangible tax reimbursement came in approximately 45,000 higher than anticipated. As well as, as well as telephone tax came in 35,000 higher than anticipated. That's all based off, when we did the budget last year, we based that off the governor's budgets, which were the best known estimates available at that time. And
Mr. Civetti,
slightly-
if I could,
Yes.
I know we got this report in our packet. I don't know if the council wants him to go through every single one, or if there were ones in particular you wanted him to give further elaboration on. What's the pleasure of the council?
I
Councilor
read, it.
Messman.
I'm okay with what I have in front of me.
Okay. Okay,
So just if I can, the one correction.
okay.
Because I got harassed by this department director. Under the expenditures, it said human services, workers' compensation was 35,000 in excess of budget. That should be the human resource department. Our human service director was wondering who got hurt in his department that cost us 35,000. So that's not human services, that's human resources.
Blame him.
Yeah. Um, but overall, again, we're trending higher, the expenses are trending lower. I just recently, last week, we filed the quarterly report to the State of Rhode Island Department of Municipal Finance where we project this year. So based on where we're going right now, if everything were to continue at this level, I would expect that at the end of fiscal 2025, we'd end up with a general fund surplus of roughly $1 million to $1.2 million on the general fund side. Again, that's depending if we continue on the current pace.
Any questions on the budget to actual?
I did also leave in front of you this evening a copy of the balance sheet. I unfortunately didn't, a different one, I think everybody has it, right? The balance sheet that just shows, correct. Again, I failed to print that out last week before I took off on Thursday evening, but that's just the balance sheet showing you where we stand. You can see the cash position. We don't expect any cash flow issues at this point.
Any questions on that? All right.
The next item, I believe, was the school department. So in your packet, you have, again, the report that the school department provided, which is their projection on where they stand through December 31st of 2024. So again, the same 6-month period and their projected results for fiscal 2025. At this point, the school department's indicating that they project to have a surplus for fiscal 2025 of roughly 144,000. In reality, they should have a surplus of 140,000 at a minimum, because that's what the town council approved to cover them with deficit reduction plan. So if you recall, when the fiscal 2025 budget was originally adopted, at that point, we had thought their cumulative deficit was roughly 600,000. So we had recommended and the council approved budgeting that over a 5-year period. So again, if we're giving them 140,000 to cover prior year deficits, that should be a surplus in the current year. So again, in my mind, they're basically projecting a break even or a roughly surplus after that deficit line item of roughly $4,000. Again, we do meet usually on a bi-weekly basis with the school department, so we continue to get updates, and obviously as soon as we're aware of anything, we'll fill everybody in at the council. I know it was discussed previous meetings, the town getting access to the financial records of the school department, so we do have access to that. We're in the process of being able to generate certain reports, and I'll try to monitor those, periodically to make sure the information we're getting here is coinciding to what's actually in the Keystone accounting system.
Councilman LeBlanc.
Just a quick question on the school side. So I know their deficit started, I think, around 400,000, jumped to 800, then it went to 4.7, and now we're at 5.8. Is that number still 5.8 as of your knowledge today?
As far as I know, yes.
Okay.
Correct.
Thanks.
Any other questions on the school report? All right, and lastly,
Okay, so update on the 2023 audit. So last week, we received an update, which I did circulate to the council, I believe, on the 22nd. Updated draft of the 2023 financial statement. It's currently going through the technical review with the The audit firm, I need to finalize the management discussion analysis section, which will go on the front portion of the audit. But just to highlight a couple of the items, and keep in mind, in the audited financial statements, there's essentially two financial statements that are presented. You have what we refer to as the government-wide financial statements, which are the first couple pages that reports everything on a full accrue basis of accounting. So in a government's financial statement, that government-wide exhibits, or those exhibits, is the only place you're ever gonna see all the liabilities and all the expenses. Or, excuse me, all liabilities and all the assets. When you look at the other set of financial statements, which we refer to as the fund financial statements, those fund financial statements focus just on the current measurement focus. So it looks at basically how you're budgeting, what's currently measurable and available. So just looking at those financial statements on the current draft, so on page 16 where it shows, which is the government-wide financial statement of net position, basically a balance sheet, it does show that at June 30th, 2023, so that specific snapshot in time, the town had a total net position deficit of $96.5 million. So again, that's utilizing the full accrual basis of accounting. That's looking at all our assets, valuing the infrastructure, depreciating that infrastructure, but then also having all your liabilities, so all your bonds, actuarial evaluation of liabilities related to pensions, to the OPEB plans. And again, when you deal with those valuations, you all know that there's a number of assumptions in there, right? They estimate the life expectancy of the individuals, when they're gonna retire. But following the audit standards or the accounting standards, that's where we sit. So the town does sit with a net pension deficit of roughly $96.6 million. Well, if we jump forward and look at the fund financial statement, so the balance sheet, which is on page 18, which again, this is where you measure current economic resources in Yorkland, basically how this body operates. It shows a total fund balance, so again, snapshot at June 30, 2023, of roughly $20.5 million. So we are in a positive position when you look at the current resources. And that breakdown is the general fund. So the town general fund, roughly $15.8 million. The school, as of June 30, 2023, had a deficit of $2.8 million. And then we have some other funds, which are your various special revenue funds, capital project funds, all combined for roughly $7.4 million. So that's where, we're basically at this point. Obviously, we're hoping that we'll receive the final drafts over the next, or the final version over the next couple of weeks. And at that point, we would ask the audit firm to come before the council and present the audited financial statements. But, in the meantime, if you're reviewing this, you have any questions, please feel free to reach out.
Councilman Pasqua.
A question on the assets and liabilities. You had mentioned the town has like 96 million in liabilities. Can you just give a little background for the council, anybody listening? What does that mean? I mean, to the layperson, that may sound like the town's ready to go in bankruptcy because they're in debt way over their head. And, does that give you like any concern to the fiscal health of the town? Is it normal to see that kind of number for the amount of people and the budget that we have?
Tough question. And wasn't liabilities. That's actually the net position. So the equity was 96 million. That equity is the net of your assets, less the liabilities, as well as the deferred inflows and outflows. I guess if you were to look at that number and say, you were a normal operating company, so your GE, Coca-Cola, if you were operating that position, you'd be probably bankrupt or insolvent, having to go for, but as a municipality, it's not unusual to see that. And you can define unusual different ways. There's many communities that, their pension systems are fully funded. They don't have the OPEB obligations, or they set up OPEB trust funds. And, this council, I give the council credit and some of your predecessors, obviously, but since Mr. Perillo got here and we came into the finance department, we set up an OPEB trust fund. So we're trying to fund that, but at this point, you have an OPEB liability. So when you look at some of the liabilities, you have your deferred inflows related to the OPEB's 9.3 million. So that's a liability. Our assets in that trust fund right now, probably roughly 250,000. So you have significant liabilities that just haven't been funded. Having a pension plan that's, controlled by the town, there was I'd say significant progress made probably back in, I believe, 2013, when they switched and went to the 457 and 401A plan, where now we have what we consider ICMA, but new hires are all part of basically a defined contribution plan versus a defined benefit plan. Defined benefit plan, the stock market goes down, our funding requirements go up. Again, they look at a snapshot of those assets at June 30th. So if that valuation of the assets at June 30th of 2003 had decreased significantly, that's going to increase your liability. So again, that's why I say there's a lot of estimates that come into all the assumptions that are made when you're looking at these liabilities. So during my experience, we've always normally, we focus on the fund level statements, because that's really what you can control. How are you budgeting your current economic resources? But that's not to say you can close your eyes and just say, okay, let's not fund pensions, because nobody's going to look at that. You do have to fund the pension plans. You do have to fund the OPEB plans. And again, I think the council's been budgeting the annual required contribution on the annual required contribution for the pension plans. We funded $100,000 the last two budgets to the OPEB trust. So we're making strides, but as long as we continue to do that, you're dealing with this. You don't want to push the ball, kick the can down the road. So again, me personally, I think the town's in good financial shape looking at current resources, but yeah, there are issues out there with the pension plans, and the pension plans can get more and more difficult, because as I said, we have more people that are retiring, right? People that are in the old pension plan, as they retire, we're not going to be contributing as much to the pension plan, or we're not going to get their contributions into the plan. So that's going to be requiring the town to fund more and more, because we don't have the employees contributing at that point once they retire. I hope that answers.
It does. Thank you.
Vice President Blake. Councilman Blake.
Just for anybody listening, so that $96.7 million number, the net position that you're talking about, the deficit. So if we were to sell all of our assets, all the cash that we have, and pay down our liabilities, we would still be in debt, $96.7 million, correct?
If you had to pay the pension plan to the full
Today.
extent that it's shown in the OPEB trust.
You got it. Yep.
OPEB plan.
Just wanted to make sure that what I'm saying is accurate from your perspective. And then just for the public's knowledge, when you take the statements that include that $96.7 million number, that net position, and you compare Coventry to all of the other municipalities in Rhode Island, which there's 39, while you did state that it's not unusual for towns to be in a deficit this large, 25 municipalities out of 39 were actually in a positive net position, a surplus. We are not one of them. So I just wanted to let the public know. That was when you look at the FY22 financials. So I just wanted to share that. Thanks.
Anything else for the finance director? Councilman Copley.
My take on it is that when I did look at all 39 cities and towns, that a lot were in the positive and the obvious ones are in the negative, but 96 million is it's not a joke to anybody. To me, it's not financially sound. It's a big number. And I hope going forward that we have a deficit reduction plan, just like we pushed on the school to close that gap. And we're going to have a lot of new tax money coming in the next 10 years, that we can really whack this debt, make it go away and get in that green, and that will make a lot easier time to run a town and have new things that we need. But until we can really get a hold on the debt, it's going to be year by year to really tighten up and make some drastic measures to hold ourselves accountable and not burden the taxpayers with trying to go anywhere above 2%, 3% raises on their taxes because they can't afford it.
I haven't looked at the list in quite some while that you're referring to, but it doesn't surprise me. But I would think if I were to go look at that list, or you may be even able to tell me, most of those municipalities that are probably operating a deficit are probably municipalities that have pension plans that are held by the town. They're not part of the state retirement system. Because obviously with the state retirement system, you have to fund at a certain level. They get their actuary studies. But also keep in mind, and I should have had the page tabbed, but that deficit does include, the teacher's pension plan, which the teachers are part of the state retirement system. And that's an obligation that gets allocated to the town, but it's allocated based on the formula that the state utilizes, looking at the contributions that are being made by each municipality. So if all of a sudden our number of teachers we employed went significantly down, that allocation of liability would decrease significantly in the financial statements. But as you said, at a snapshot point in time, that is our deficit. But again, the school's been funding the state retirement system the way it should be funded, or what was required to be funded. But unfortunately, we do have to record a liability on the town's financial statement for that state deficit. Legally, I don't know if Coventry weren't to exist. So as you said, if we were to liquidate everything, would we owe those retirees? I'm not an attorney, but my opinion would be no, we don't, because they're part of the state system. They would own that. They would owe that obligation. So I think you have to look at that. And it's clearly not 96 million, but I think you'd have to look at what is that obligation and say, okay, well, yes, it's in our financial statement, but is it really the town's obligation, or is it the state obligation?
Councilman LeBlanc.
Completely understand your commentary. I do believe other towns and cities also have teachers that are probably in the same program. And I'm just comparing all the towns and municipalities in Rhode Island. And 64.1% in FY22 actually had a positive net position using the external issued financial statements. So that's all.
At this point, I know that folks are here for a particular item on the agenda, so I just want to take a motion to take the agenda out of order, if that's okay.
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Councilman LeBlanc,
I second.
second by Councilman Copley. Any discussion? Hearing none, clerk, please take the roll.
Councilmember Brown,
Yes.
Councilmember Pasqua,
Yes.
Councilmember Capaldi,
Yes.
Councilmember LeBlanc,
Yes.
Councilmember Copley,
Yes.
Vice President Verducci,
Yes.
President Lima,
Yes.
7 in the affirmative, 0 in the negative, motion passes.
We've got a couple of, I would assume, relatively quick resolutions we'll get to from department heads. Item A and B for the chief, if you want to come up. Resolution 2025-6 to approve the purchase of a 2025 Animal Control Ford Transit T250 van for the Coventry Police Department. This is page 97 to 129 in your packet. Do I hear a motion to approve the resolution?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion by Councilman Brown, second by Councilman Pasqua. Chief.
Well, in August of '24, we had an ACO van that was involved in a crash. It was actually totaled out, and the insurance company gave us $8,550 for it. We're looking to purchase a new vehicle for the animal control, paying the remainder of that balance of impact fees of $50,481.81.
Any questions, discussion for the chief? Hearing none, clerk, please take the roll.
Councilmember Brown,
Yes.
Councilmember Pasqua,
Yes.
Councilmember Capaldi,
Yes.
Councilmember LeBlanc,
Yes.
Councilmember Copley,
Yes.
Vice President Verducci,
Yes.
President Lima,
Yes.
7 in the affirmative, 0 in the negative, motion passes.
And Resolution 2025-7 to approve the purchase of a live scan fingerprint machine for the Coventry Police Department, page 130 in your packets. Do I hear a motion to approve?
Make a motion to approve.
Motion by Councilman Pasqua,
Second.
second by Councilman Brown. Chief?
So this one here is a new fingerprint machine for us. Our old one's at end of life. With this one here, we applied for and got a grant for it to cover it totally.
Love to hear it. Any discussion? Vice President Verducci.
Just a quick question out of curiosity. Are there operational impacts to that? Do you need certain software or to, log into a network or?
It's all included.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? Clerk, please take the roll.
Councilmember Brown,
Yes.
Councilmember Pasqua,
Good job on the grant, yes.
Councilmember Capaldi,
Yes.
Councilmember LeBlanc,
Yes.
Councilmember Copley,
Yes.
Vice President Verducci,
Yes.
President Lima?
Yes.
7 in the affirmative, 0 in the negative, motion passes.
Thanks, Chief.
Thank you.
Resolution 2025-9 to approve the allocation of school impact fees in the amount of $53,625.25 for Allen Shawn Feinstein Middle School to replace their telephone and intercom system. This is page 146 in your packets. Do I hear a motion
Make the motion.
to approve?
Yes.
Motion to approve by Councilman Brown,
Second.
second by Vice President Verducci. Discussion, Manager Perillo.
The superintendent apologizes. The facilities director could not make it tonight. They just gave me some notes on these two items that are in front of you. The intercom system has been on their capital list for several years now, and they've pretty much tried to Band-Aid it, and it no longer can be saved. The system's failing, and there are problems regarding bell schedules, making announcements, and all calls to the classrooms. So they get to potential liability in case there is some type of critical incident. They won't be able to communicate with the students. So they're asking to use impact fees for this purchase. They currently have $182,000 in that account.
Any discussion? Hearing none, clerk, please take the roll.
Councilmember Brown?
Yes.
Councilmember Pasqua?
Yes.
Councilmember Capaldi?
Yes.
Councilmember LeBlanc?
Yes.
Councilmember Copley?
Yes.
Vice President Verducci?
Yes.
President Lima?
Yes.
7 in the affirmative, 0 in the negative, passes.
And Resolution 2025-10, the allocation of school impact fees in the amount of $4,243.62 for Western Coventry Elementary School for a new chlorine monitor and associated parts. This is page 155 in your packet. Do I hear a motion?
Motion approved.
Motion by Councilman Pasqua,
Second.
second by Councilman Capaldi. Discussion?
So Western Coventry, as you all know, has an issue with drinking water there and the well. It's failing. Again, they're trying some different approaches to keep it together until they're able to know a grant. There recently has been 2 no-drink orders in the last couple of years due to an increased level of manganese, and this chlorine monitor system is needed to be replaced in order to get the water system back online. Again, impact fees for this purchase.
Any discussion? Hearing none, clerk, please take the roll.
Councilmember Brown?
Yes.
Councilmember Pasqua?
Yes.
Councilmember Capaldi?
Yes.
Councilmember LeBlanc?
Yes.
Councilmember Copley?
Yes.
Vice President Verducci?
Yes.
President Lima?
Yes.
7 in the affirmative, 0 in the negative, motion passes.
And Resolution 2025-8 to approve the allocation of $35,000 in ARPA funds for the invasive weed management and intervention in the Flat River Reservoir. Co-sponsors on this are Councilman Pasqua and Councilman Brown. I'll turn it over to them.
Thank you. I'll read the resolution first, and then I'll talk about what transpired this. So the resolution reads as, whereas Town of Coventry recognizes the importance of Flat River Reservoir's fragile environment, economic impact, and recreational value to the community, and whereas the Town of Coventry in June 2024 was granted eminent domain by court order, obtaining ownership of the Flat River Reservoir for public use and benefit, and whereas the Town of Coventry is committed to developing meaningful public access to the reservoir to facilitate activities including but not limited to fishing, boating, water skiing, wakeboarding, jet skiing, swimming, and other recreational pursuits. And whereas the Town of Coventry is dedicated to the ongoing maintenance of the reservoir, including measures for invasive weed abatement to protect its water and recreational usability. And whereas the Town of Coventry acknowledges the reservoir has experienced lower than normal water levels over the last 4 years, as well as a lack of invasive weed treatments due to the actions of the previous owner of Social Holdings during the preceding, it should say 3 years, it says 2, so that'll have to be a friendly amendment. And whereas the Town of Coventry recognizes the invasive weed situation in Flat River Reservoir is significantly worse than in recent history due to the lack of maintenance during the aforementioned period. Now therefore be resolved that the Honorable Town Council allocates $35,000 of ARPA funding to the herbicide prevention and invasive weeds in the Flat River Reservoir for the 2025 season, and that this funding is intended to restore the reservoir to a more manageable, cost-effective state, ensuring long-term health of the ecosystem and its continued accessibility for recreational use in future seasons. So I think we need a motion, then we can have a discussion.
It's a pleasure of the council.
I make a motion to approve.
Motion to approve from Councilman Pasqua,
Second.
second by Councilman Brown. Discussion. Councilman Brown.
I'd like to amend the motion to add $5,000 for the Tyoke Lake and $2,500 to Breezy Lake.
We have a motion to amend the resolution.
Second.
We have a second from Councilman Pasqua. Discussion on the amendment. So just in general, I appreciate that we're considering the other associations. I think the points from folks in public comment is well taken that, you know, now that Johnson's Pond is more officially under the town, we need to start bringing all of our bodies of water and their interest groups together and having comprehensive discussions about preserving these natural resources for the entire town. And I almost think that regardless, separate maybe from the Conservation Commission, I don't know if there needs to be a committee established of just representative of all the lakes and pond associations or whatever it might be, or something to that effect. I don't know if the amount that is in the amendment is enough or would be helpful. What I would like some clarity on would be maybe from the Tyoke Lake Association and from the Breezy Lake Association or Upper Dam Pond Conservation Association is what amount would be helpful, considering you're asking, I think, one time. It would be nice to know what would be a meaningful amount to them as well in terms of their maintenance. We shouldn't guess what amount that they would need. So I agree with the sentiment of adding funding for those two respective bodies of water, but I would be in favor of continuing this tonight to have conversations with all of these lake associations at the table so they can all work together. I don't think anyone here is against weed abatement for any of them. I think it's just a matter of how can we work together and maybe take a set pool of funds, because if what Mr. Pendergast said is true and these can't be used for weed abatement, then we need to determine what we have available from other funds and then decide how we split from there. But that's just mine. Councilman LeBlanc.
I do know that I received many calls on this resolution, and I asked some questions on costs for Tyoke Lake Association. They spend between $5,000 and $6,000 a year, and they've spent that for the last 15 years. And I know that Breezy Lake, the upper pond, they spend about $9,000 a year. They spent that the last 4 years. So I completely agree that we need to include all ponds in this type of resolution. My other concern is that we're using ARPA funds, which is a one-time revenue source. I'd prefer that we have a more in-depth discussion and see if we actually have proper funding in our budget so that we can continue on rather than just using a one-time revenue source. So I think that this resolution, when inclusive of all ponds, makes sense. But I think that additional discussion needs to happen before we actually vote. That's just my 2 cents.
Yeah. Councilman Pasqua.
So just a little background on the resolution itself. I appreciate Breezy Lake and Tyoke coming out tonight and talking with us. And I can appreciate the position you guys are in, and I know how hard you work to get control of that situation there because of my involvement with Johnson's Pond Civic Association for years. So, but this resolution was written by me. And I represent a district, just like most of us up here, one single area of Coventry. And so when we present a resolution, we can amend it to include other places by other reps who represent areas that your lakes are in. So I'm completely open and totally encourage putting other bodies of water in this to treat those other areas. I think it needs to happen. This particular resolution for me was a one-time situation because number one, Civic Association gave back $15,000 to the community because they weren't able to do any type of treatment for the last 3 years. So they gave that money back to the community. And so they're kind of looking, saying, hey, you know, we have a serious weed situation here and we need to cut the grass, and then it's easier to mow it when it's only a couple inches high than 3 feet high. So, and most of you can understand that, people who have been dealing with this issue for a while, if you miss a year, it makes a big difference. So we've missed 3 and we've had low water levels. So I don't want anybody to think that this council together wrote this resolution. It's not a reflection on anybody up here. I wrote it, and I wrote it for my district, and I encourage other councilors to come up and say, let's add a little bit in for Tyoke Lake, Breezy Lake, and whatever you guys need to help you. My position was a one-time cash injection to get a hold of this problem. The homeowners and the state, as they've helped you guys, they helped Johnson's Pond, and we've been able to handle the situation over there all these years, but we've had a bump in the road that nobody else has had. So this is why I came forward and said, look, I think we need a little bit of help here. Time's of the essence, and permitting and all this stuff needs to get underway, and I wanted a clear picture of what we could do. My concern additionally is that we have made a significant commitment to Flat River Reservoir to make public access. And we're talking about beaches and boat ramps and so on and so forth. Well, if we're spending a considerable amount of town time, effort, and money into doing this, nobody wants to swim in weeds and brown water. So it's just as important to pay attention to the water quality of all of these bodies of water, but especially this one, since we've committed to doing this. So I feel like if we're not
committed, legally obligated.
We're legally obligated to do this. So I feel like we have to look at both sides of this coin and pay attention to the water quality at the same time, because we all know when we go to a lake somewhere and you look over the side of your boat and it's brown, you don't want to go in it, and you remember that and you don't want to go back. So for me, it's extremely important to pay attention to both aspects. And I don't want us to go down the road that we've been down with roads and trash trucks, where you have we've neglected as a town to maintain our trash trucks and maintain roads, and we're going to turn away at the chance of getting a hold of a problem that we've essentially had going on here for a few years now, that's going to escalate and become a much more costly issue in a few years. When you put a boat ramp or a beach in, and people are yelling at the town saying, hey, you guys spent, hundreds of thousands of dollars, $1 million putting this public access in, but we can't go 10 feet without clogging up a boat or a jet ski, or can't swim. They're going to be looking at us because we should have stepped in now to deal with this instead of a $300,000 bill later to treat a larger area. So that's why this came forward. But I just want people to understand that I wrote this for my district, and I encourage other councilors to amend it for their districts, because I think this is just as important in every single body of water in Coventry, and I can appreciate the position all of you are in.
Vice President Verducci.
Thank you very much, Councilman Pasqua. I fully accept that. I really appreciate you saying that, because I want to advocate for my district, which would be the town. And I really like the way you set that up there. If I'm looking at this from a townwide perspective, yeah, I am interested in where this particular pot of funding came from. I know we can follow up on that. I think we had some good testimony before that framed this in the right way, which is the short term and the long term. So on the short term aspect, there is some weed abatement issues we all need to get done. But I think if we coordinate a little bit better, I was interested to learn that all these entities are actually purchasing from the same weed abater, which only makes sense. There's economies of scale here if we can get coordinated on that aspect and at least get you a little bit more bang for your buck. And then again, we had the discussion with the grants. That can only help us as well. So short-term strategy for a one-time influx with one-time funds makes sense. Do it town-wide, I would say. And then going along with that, we need the long-term strategy and then a funding source that connects to that strategy. Legislative grants are great, but they are not guaranteed forever. You could have a change in policy or a change in politics. So, I think, again, staying coordinated on that, we can leverage our funds a little bit better. Perhaps we think of including this in CIP. It may be helpful if we all start to look at this as a true asset from a townwide perspective. Everybody's the same. They're all assets. If you get a prorated share based on size, to me, that just seems fair and may make financial sense. So I'm all for exploring that as well. And then kind of lastly, where we go from here, I really think it makes sense to look at the long-term funding structure of these. I don't know if it's a line item or what, but, room to explore. But going back to the point of today, as far as this resolution goes, if we can put a little bit finer point on where that number came from, perhaps we can adjust it and prorate it. Again, I think, we shouldn't guess. We should look at it. Those numbers are kind of consistent, Councilman Brown, right, in general. But we'll look at that a little bit more. But that's really what I got to say about that.
Councilman Capaldi.
Councilman Pasqua, if you, for this one-time fee or one-time cleaning of weeds, does it cost, did you figure out that it's $35,000 to help Johnson's Pond right now? Because if we do that's what it is.
So before I asked for this, I consulted with the JPCA president who's always in direct contact with the weed abatement company, and the cost per acre, as stated, is $450 per acre. So not every acre of the reservoir needs to be treated. Some parts of Johnson's Pond are 32 feet deep. There's no weeds down there. Sunlight doesn't get to it. So some areas of the reservoir are extremely shallow, and you don't go into those areas anyway, so there's no propellers chopping anything up. So there's only, out of 650 acres, there's only certain areas of the 650 acres that are even areas that you would need to treat. So after President Lemoy talking with JPCA President Lemoy talking with the company, they've determined that between what the state is forecasted to give us, the association, plus the what the residents raise for treatment of Wood Cove and other areas of the pond, this additional funding of $35,000 would cover enough of an area to make a large dent to be able to basically reset the clock. So a normal pattern going forward can be done just as it was for many years successfully. This is just to get it back on track.
Just to add, I want to go to a point that Mr. Pendergast had made about not continually throwing, and I think Mr. Narkowitz made this point too, not to just continually throw money at weed abatement, but rather let's use technology or science that's been developed to filter what's getting into the water that creates and feeds the weeds. So I think when we talk about planning for the future, we need to have conversations about installing infrastructure that makes it so we don't have to spend that kind of money on weeds. So I think it would be great if, what conversations or whatever you've had, I don't know if Maria's aware of that, but there should be larger conversations about what does that look like in terms of the larger ecosystem of all of our rivers and how they all connect with each body of water, and where to strategically install infrastructure like that so that we're not contributing to each other's problems. We're actually helping each other in the larger ecosystem. So I think that should be part of the conversation. We should look at that first before we decide that we need to throw that kind of money at weed abatement every single year townwide. So, Councilman Capaldi.
Earlier, when we first started talking about this, you came up with a great idea of having like a committee or something with everyone being represented. What would be next steps on getting something done like that? Because obviously we're already talking about things like this, and I think we should form that sooner than later.
Yeah, we can't really talk about that specific item now, but I think it's something that would be established by resolution or ordinance to bring them together. Councilman Pasqua.
Some concern was brought up about ARPA funds and using it for this. Just want some clarification between the solicitor and maybe the manager. We have an item on ARPA for open space and infrastructure.
So with respect, I know everybody's an expert on how to spend ARPA funds. There are 430 some odd pages of Treasury guidance from the IRS, the Treasury regulations, on what you can and cannot spend ARPA money for. An overarching item that you can spend ARPA money for is if you create a present deficit in your budget, you can fill that deficit in with ARPA funds. There are a variety of ways to craft around some of the language in the act. And I'm not going to get into the specifics of that now, but I've had general conversations with Mr. Civetti and Mr. Perillo, and I'm confident that we have a slot to put this in. With that said, just procedurally, while I have the mic, a couple of things. There's a motion on the floor, and there's an amendment, just to kind of keep the record clean. If the council's preference, and I'm not suggesting anything, is to postpone action on this resolution, I respectfully request that the amendment be withdrawn, and that the motion itself be withdrawn, and that there be a motion entertained to postpone this to a date certain. With that said, a point on the ARPA funds isn't so much the ARPA funds itself, but given that this is an in-year expenditure, it would be necessary to have a fiscal note from finance that would explain where the money's coming from. So I think a fiscal note is in order to be attached to the resolution in any event.
Councilman Vasquez.
So we mentioned a couple of times about hearing from those associations about what they would need. They're here. Can we ask them? They've been doing this for years. They know.
Just from a legal standpoint, I don't want to get too far afield from the OMA. This is not a workshop on what their costs are. I think the best estimate of what their costs are the actual costs themselves. It would seem that the mechanism, unfortunately, is for the town manager to collect the information, and in the interest of time, to put it on before this council again in a workshop format to both consider the resolution, to review the financial digestion of the information, because yes, I know we're going to get snow tonight. It's going to be 22 degrees, but in 6 weeks, we're going to have weeds to treat. And that's not that far away for any of these folks. So
Yeah, I don't, I don't think it's a huge lift. I think what may be reasonable, and you guys can shake your heads up and down or left and right, is maybe just to see what is the average bill been the last 3 seasons, and then go come back for conversations. Yeah. Okay. No, but it's helpful to know what's been spent each year. That's what we're looking for. Yeah. So, Jerry, just come to the mic so people can hear.
Gary Narkowitz, 21 Beach Street, Coventry, Rhode Island. We treat about 15 to 20 acres out of our 225 acres. It is all the money we get for our grants and our fundraising and our dues. If we could treat, we'd probably like to treat about 100 acres, maybe a little bit more than that. So just using a ratio analysis, if 15 acres is $5,000, you just multiply it by 6, it would be 30 to 40,000 to treat what I would imagine would be the amount of lake that you would want to treat. One of the things that was said earlier was that, our lake sometimes gets drawn down because fire department asks us to do it, or DPW asks us to do it. So we do end up with some drawdown because, not just because of weed kill, and we also draw down because of weed kill. Like the woman, Stacy, I think said, there's a good correlation between weed kill in shallow areas if you're dry during cold weather, which we've had enough of it this year. So, and I've had the lake low enough. I'm hoping I'm going to get some weed kill in some of the areas that we don't have money to treat. Does that help at all? Okay. I've been doing it for, I don't know, 15, 20 years. So I have a lot of experience with it. Okay.
I want to allow Mr. Pendergast, because he's been squirming and raising. They are uncomfortable chairs.
So Tom Pendergast, 6 White Rock Road. So we treat the entire lake. It's only 23 acres only. It's 23 acres. It used to be 15 feet deep. So the problem was not that bad. But because of the stormwater runoff into the lake, it has lost half of its volume. So now the entire lake is affected. And if we didn't treat, we would lose the lake. Now, there have been proposals in our own association that says, well, this is pretty expensive. Maybe we should do it every other year. So after consulting and after seeing, you can't do it every other year. Once you've got aquatic invasive species, it's always there and it's there forever. And you can't do anything about it except treat it or work on the long term. So I have the president of the Upper Dam Pond Conservation Association with me. And I'll be frank with you, we are doing what we need to control our lake. Whatever you give us is great, and we appreciate all of it. I would propose that anything you decide to give to the Upper Dam Pond, we would invest in the long-term strategy, not the short-term strategy. So we come up with $9,000 a year, and we work hard for it, but we do it. So I would propose taking the money and moving it to long-term strategy. We're doing a pilot project this spring with the help of the University of New Hampshire. So University of New Hampshire is the gold star, and they are the stormwater experts in the country. And they've come down and helped us design a low-cost, low-maintenance, highly effective system that could remove the phosphorus from the water. And that's where I think the town should look. And we need to spend some time talking to the Planning Commission because they're building. And what are they doing about the stormwater? The minimal amount that they need to get the construction done. We have an opportunity to change that here. And I think we should look into that. Other questions?
Mark Lemoy, 34 Island Drive, excuse me, President, Civic Association, Johnson's Pond. So we treat, depending upon how much funding we get, we treat between 25 and 40 acres over the past 12 years, roughly. We get one state grant, and the rest of it is private funding from residents. One of the things that everybody's discussed tonight is one of the items that comes up. And so Johnson's Pond has never had blue-green algae. Blue-green algae is toxic to both humans and pets and is a very serious condition. We had it in 2022 and 2023 for the first time ever in recorded history on Johnson's Pond. Johnson's Pond never gets blue-green algae because the water is always flowing into it and then out of it through the dam or over the spillway. But because the water levels were so low. So one of the major contributing factors, Tom brings up phosphorus, is nutrients. So nutrients feed, so when these weeds break down and there's so many of them, it takes up all the dissolved oxygen in the water, which hurts the fish, hurts the turtles, the entire environment. But also what it does is it's a major contributing factor to blue-green algae, which is a public health threat. I just wanted to bring that up as well. Does anybody have any questions about what the Civic Association does or has done in past history? Thank you.
Councilman Pasqua.
Just one point of clarity, it was brought up twice now about lowering water levels on ice, and the reason why this is important to this conversation about this resolution is that, yes, we've had a cold winter, but Johnson's Pond this year, unfortunately, froze before the water got down to the ground. So we did not, almost all the reservoir was submerged when the ice came in. So essentially the ice lowered down on top of the ground, so we're not going to experience that massive weed kill off this year like we would have anticipated if we had it all the way down to bare ground. I've got about 6 inches or so of solid ice in front of my property on dirt. So unfortunately, our timing was a little off on that. So we're not going to experience that massive weed kill we would have hoped to get.
So procedurally, we are on an amendment from Councilman Brown. My preference would be that we show as a council to the town and the community that we put some thought into this to be fair. We have all lake associations submit information they think is helpful to the town manager, and that it be continued to the February 11th meeting. And that way, the resolution maybe could be reintroduced with the added amounts, now that we have context from the Tioga Lake Association and from Upper Dam Pond on what their wishes are. I would rather we not try and rush it, and I think we should do it in a way that we can all rationalize and justify and still get the job done. So that's just my comments with respect procedurally to where we are in the amendment.
I withdraw my motion to amend.
Okay. Councilman Pasqua.
Would ask that we continue to the February 25th, the next meeting after the 11th.
Okay. We have a motion to continue to February 25th. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Vice President Verducci. Any discussion? Clerk, please take the roll.
Councilmember Brown?
Yes.
Councilmember Pasqua? Yes. Councilmember Capaldi?
Yes.
Councilmember LeBlanc?
Yes.
Councilmember Copley?
Yes.
Vice President Verducci?
Yes.
President Lima?
Yes.
7 in the affirmative, 0 in the negative. Motion passes.
And thank you for the members of the public that participated. It feels good to have people come and show that they care about this community and want to work together. So thank you. Stop at all stop signs on the way home. Thank you.
Strictly to pudding.
Hmm?
That's what I had at 12.
I heard it snoring.
Hopefully my husband didn't eat the other half of it. Yeah. Yeah, he worked during the day today.
No, he's got to go when we have executive
I
session.
know, yeah.
I'm just waiting to not yell over everybody. All right, I'll now hand it over for the solicitor's report.
So I'll start, if I can, with the bottom, since we're out of order. So you all received the dam operations permit from me with the dam operations permit was approved previously, but the exhibits were not so constituted. Did get some feedback from DEM on the dam operation schedule that we have So we're going to be making some changes to that. So there'll be another draft that goes out on that. We've got a couple of weeks to get that done. I'll keep you posted. A lot of the delay in getting that, quite frankly, was that the resources devoted to getting some of that work done, quite frankly, were being employed getting both phases of the repair done to the dam. So just wanted to keep you up to date on that. I don't know if you have questions. The Arnold Road landfill and solar array, couple of things. I had hoped that we would have had the investment committee meeting before. I know that Councilman LeBlanc, among others, looks forward to the result on where we are, but I don't have that because we didn't meet. One of the bankers had to cancel for some reason, so I think we're meeting Thursday or early next week. I don't know which, but I'll keep you posted on that. There are, I don't know if I had mentioned it to the council before, but the annual reporting had come in, which I still have to sign off on. The annual reporting came in with respect to the ELUR and our reporting to DEM. Nothing remarkable in that reporting at all, so that's good news. There are a couple of defects that were noticed in the cap, not as a result of construction, just, you know, ordinary stuff that goes on. And they will be repairing those defects as soon as the weather is warm enough to permit the repair. So that's where that's in, and that's just sort of normal. That's for the new folks on the council. That's not a holy crap event that, you know, the top's coming off the landfill. It's, you know, there are seams that sometimes come apart for whatever reason. So that's that on that issue. I don't know if anybody had any questions. On the solar array, we had a site meeting today to discuss a bunch of things. It was balmy, 25 degrees this morning at 7:30 and breezy. But that said, they're almost done with the construction phase on this. We're expecting to go live in February, which means money begins to flow to the town in the lease payments. At that time, I was also advised by Kevin McGee this morning, and I talked to the town manager about this, that we've not been reimbursed from the trust group for annual maintenance that we've performed there. So when I have my meeting with them, I'll bring up a pro rata share on that to be reimbursed to the town. It's probably an oversight, as I may have mentioned at a prior meeting. The lawyer who was the point person, the other 40% of the trust group, David Graham, retired at a meeting last week with successor counsel, whose name is Timothy Trant. Nice guy. He's been behind the scenes in the same firm working with Mr. Graham. So I don't expect any big changes there. It's just different people work different ways. I'm sure that we'll work well together. I had a very good working relationship with David. This new fellow's just getting his arms around some things. And there will be a lease amendment that comes before you. Part of the reason for today's visit was the actual footprint of the site did not accommodate equipment in certain planned places on the original plan. And by moving that, it requires a different type of easement to be recognized within the lease. It's nothing major. In doing the actual site visit today, I just wanted to put eyes on it along with Kevin. And the town manager is also satisfied with Kevin's assessment. So myself and legal counsel for Amoresco will go ahead and get that lease amendment done. The title report came over to me today because they are going to go out and finance the project now that they've built it. They want to put some money back in their pocket. They need to do a title report. So we'll be taking a look at that too for other reasons that I don't want to get into here tonight, but reasons related to neighboring property, which we all know is Senator New Any questions on that item? I want to say this is a much more comfortable setup than we've had in the past. Microphones are great. Sometime in February, is my understanding. Yeah, we'll let you know. Get out an email. Oh, yeah, they know all of that. Yeah, but as far as, I really don't know if we're scheduled to get that reporting, but I don't know that it's a big deal that we would get it. I would assume we could if you're interested. Oh, yeah. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, they want to get the most bang for their buck. I mean, so, there is a life to the panels, by the way, so that at a certain point, their efficiency begins to diminish, which is the reason why they go 25 years, because I think at some point, I want to say close to 20 years, there's sort of I wouldn't say precipitous, but there's a more rapid rate of decay in that last 6 or 7 years. So, other questions? Okay.
Just speaking to Councilman Brown's question on the reporting, I thought we would definitely need it annually, because don't they pay us per kilowatt hour?
Yeah.
So I think we would just need to make sure that we get that certified by somebody.
It's a great question. I mean, candidly, I have not turned my attention to what even the the quantitative and qualitative pieces of that reporting would look like, because it is important for that reason. One of the provisions in the lease talks about downtime for maintenance, things like that. If there's some issue that they need to attend to, but they have to prove to us that there's an issue. They just can't say, "Hey, we're cutting it in half this month because we have an issue." They have to actually. So, yeah, that's a great point. I'll get you that answer. Okay. So if we can, I'd like to talk council rules for a minute. I took an opportunity to update, or I should say, edit the rules that were here before. And I say here before, I wrote them. There are some typographical errors where you'll still see a reference to 5 as opposed to 7. We'll be fixing those. But as we go through them, if you want to point them out, I won't be offended by any of those edits. I just wanted to step through them a little bit, especially for the new folks. So, these rules really govern the 25-27 term. I know that you've had a chance to read them. I've tried to put them in plain English and to have them be organized. I know that this group appreciates this. I mean, you do need a bit of structure on how you conduct your meetings and conduct yourself, both for reasons of recording votes and other legalities. But, I just want to say that I've sat through a lot of council meetings in my life in a lot of places, both as on this side of the dais and on that side of the dais. You're very lucky you have a very respectful constituency of people. I mean, you don't have the decorum problems that seem to visit other places regularly, and the abuse of time at a microphone, except when a lawyer gets in front of it. I mean, yes, some people do abuse the time. I just want to point out, because there are time limits in here, generally 4 minutes. 4 minutes is a hell of a lot of time for somebody to speak, particularly if they're rambling on and rambling all over the place. I know you want to give people an opportunity to be heard. There is a provision in your rules and in your docket and mind you, when I came here 2 years ago, we junked what was here. Okay, I wrote these. This is what I do. And you generously provide people an opportunity to speak on docketed and undocketed items. you should make sure that if they're speaking on a docketed item, that they're at the right part of the agenda. Okay, undocketed, other part of the agenda. And you want to try, if you're going to give everybody 10 minutes to speak, well, then guess what? You got to give everyone in the room that night 10 minutes to speak. You got to know that when you do it. Otherwise, you really do have to try to hold people to the fore. It's on the agenda, but the answer is no. So I might politely suggest to leadership at the beginning of the meeting.
So this is, and obviously this is the town council, it's not my council, but I don't like to start off a sentiment of a first connection with the public of you took time out of your life to come here and speak. And so I'm telling you, I'm shutting you off at this time. The hope is they'll be quick and to the point and respectful, but sometimes it's going to require me. But if I anticipate we're going to have a lot of people coming to speak, there have been times in the previous 2 years prior to when you joined the council where I said, you're going to have this much time to speak. And I'm going to ask that if someone already made the point that you're going to make, just echo those sentiments and have a seat. So it's really an exercise of judgment and understanding what's in the docket before you. My preference, but folks on the council can tell me they would prefer otherwise, that the rules be set every meeting, no matter what. I just think you can take it on a case-by-case basis.
Since we're on that topic, two things about that then. The other thing that helps, to your point, Councilwoman Capaldi, is the written testimony option. I like a lot of that when it's technical. You know, tonight, for instance, would have been great if we got a couple of sheets with those costs on it. And then, you know, to Council President's point there, I'm interested to know what is the application and process of actually suspending those rules if we saw fit, you know, given a certain.
They're your rules.
So we can suspend the rules.
I mean, they're your rules, okay? You don't want to provide structure and then take it away, okay?
In certain settings, like the workshop with planning next week, and we've done workshops, I've taken a motion to suspend them to make it more of a conversation.
Well, one of the things, you know, and I'm going to, it's good that we're taking questions. First of all, on the docket, there's a provision to accept written testimony. Whoever chairs the meeting or the subcommittee, when you accept, first of all, if someone comes and says, I have some papers, accept the papers, entertain a motion to accept the papers into the record, first, second, vote, boom, it's in the record. Then the chair has every right in the world to say, thank you for providing this, we'll read it, we'll take it into consideration. Please confine your remarks to anything other than what you've told us. Don't read to us. I think Councilman Pasqua pointed out tonight, hey, I got the stuff in my packet, I read it. You know, even though they're providing it to you that night, accept it into the record, it's been considered. You got something else for us? Great, you got 4 minutes. I mean, you're not going to be as abrupt as that. But that's sort of the gist. I mean, yeah. Well, you know, when you... Yeah, one of the things I can tell you is, especially when you have repeat presenters, they begin to like the fact that they can stand up and talk to the group. Well, if they're here every 2 weeks and they're here on the same topic, we got it. I mean, you're not going to shut them off and shut them down, but stay to your 4 minutes. You know, there are some people that you're going to see, no matter what council you sit on, you'll see them again and again on the same topic. Doesn't mean you want to shut them down. It just means you want to narrow it a bit. Obviously, there's a president and a vice president. The difference between Coventry and other cities and towns is that in other cities and towns, you have an elected executive, which in some cases can be an elected town administrator or mayoral form of government. You have neither. In Coventry, you have a council form of government. The council employs myself and Mr. Perillo really as, you know, part of the management team, and Mr. Perillo employs Mr. Civetti, and that's your entire senior management team, if private company. But for political reasons and legal reasons, certain duties by operation of law devolve upon the titular head of your local government, which in this case is the president. You know, the president has to sign certain financing documents. You know, I could go on and on and on, but there are requirements of times when the president must act. When you have personnel issues, which we don't have personnel issues, let me strike that. When the town manager, for example, comes up for annual review, it falls to the leadership of the council to coordinate that process of, you know, the whole review process. And, you know, as a town, we're kind of new to that process, you know, that was started about a year or so ago. So that's why as you read this, you say some of it's obvious and it relates to meetings. Well, some of it doesn't. You know, leadership, whether it's the president because she's in town or the vice president because she's out of town, you know, we have a docket to prepare literally every 2 weeks. That's a volume of work. I know that leadership spends a lot of time. You know, they've never once said, don't put that on, okay? The real question is it ready, right? I mean, do we have everything that we need? This is not about, and I will tell you that from where I stand, I'm in a very funny position because, as I've said before, and I'll talk about it in my letter of engagement, you hire me, but I work for the Municipal Corporation of Coventry. That's where my fidelity lies, practically. So, you know, we embrace each other in a different way. But, you know, your president and vice president have to make decisions about docketing things. They work hand in glove with Joanne Amatrano. When I first came here, I worked with Councilwoman Lima and Councilman LeBlanc to talk about how best to structure an agenda for flow purposes. That's changed a little bit because I heard from this council that you'd like to have two standing committees, safety services, to deal with safety services issues and licensing issues, and then also to have a finance committee. So that's changed a little bit, and so your docket will change a little bit. But the goal is to have a consistent docket in its appearance and in its flow for every one of your regular council meetings. When we talk about OMA, for example, there is no requirement that you have participation at every single one of your meetings. What does that mean? You're going to have a meeting on Tuesday next week that's a joint meeting with the Planning Commission. At that meeting, you and the Planning Commission are going to receive a presentation from your planning director, Doug McLean, to talk about a variety of different legislative changes that he would like to make, why he would like to make them, or have me make them, and propose them to you. And practically speaking, what does that mean to the planning process so that both you understand it and the Planning Commission understands its practical implications? With all due respect to the public, that's a pretty technical meeting, and it's a pretty thick meeting. And they're going to have an opportunity to comment on the legislation when it comes before you for consideration. I would suggest to you that there's going to be a volume of work Tuesday night. Frankly, it's a workshop. We don't have a lot of workshops. We had a workshop, if you recall, some of you weren't on the council, relative to implementing the housing package and some other changes to land use legislation at the state level that necessitated local legislation be implemented. And that was an undertaking. I mean, we had a lot of people in this room to talk about that. a couple of times. And that was really done in a workshop session. Some of it was done as part of a council meeting, which was a little awkward. So I just point that out to you. The Open Meetings Act, we're going to talk, so by the way, next Thursday is the 6th. We have ethics training. Lynn Radishis is coming in from the Ethics Commission. She will present, followed by, I will try to mask my voice so I can entertain you, myself on the OMA and ARPA. I know that Joanne will be wrapped with attention when it comes to ARPA. That's a separate process. APRA, ARPA, yeah, I know. I want to talk about, Mr. Manager, a meeting perhaps with department heads in the town clerk with respect to coordinating APRA requests and so forth. But so you'll have that training next week. Your meetings are governed by the OMA. That's referenced in here. I don't restate the OMA. It's here. I know what it is. You'll know what it is generally. And if you're going to step in something, one of us in the solicitor's office will jump out of their seat and say, we can't do that. Like, I know that we limited some discussion tonight on an issue that we wanted to go a bit further on. Councilwoman Capaldi. Committees. This is the first time, I mean, obviously, there were rules last year that did not have a section 4 that included 2 standing committees of the council. These are proposed. The subject matter of these committees is something that I've drawn upon from past experience that I would suggest to you, you know, if you want to add something to it or change it, or ask me why the hell I put something in here. They're both pretty broad. You know, Finance Committee deals with finance matters. There will be matters that this council will want to consider as a group. All matters should be introduced as new business, and and you're going to have to get used to this. The new business matters that are properly before finance get referred to finance. Finance has their meeting. They make recommendations at that meeting. They take a vote at that meeting, and then they report out to the full council so that the full council can vote on it. Okay? It's not like the Finance Committee controls your finance agenda in town. Okay? It's so that they can choose some of these things a little finer. You know, you'll have a corrective action plan to work your way through with respect to schools. Okay? You might want them as a council as a whole to choose some of that stuff finer and bring it back to the council with recommendations. On the safety services side, for example, I don't think we want to debate the merits of stop signs at a regular council meeting. I don't think you want to be involved in, if we, we haven't had one, I'm going to jinx us, knock on wood, if we have to revoke a license, okay, or we have to have a show cause hearing or shut somebody down because they lost their mind over the weekend, a license holder, you know, at a bar or whatever. You want your Safety Services Committee to be the convene on an emergency basis, report out to the council. Licenses as a whole can go to Safety Services, or tell them which ones are properly before them to be approved, and you won't see them. And you won't have to. You know, for example, in Cranston, license gets approved in Safety Services. That's the end of it. It doesn't come back to you as a group, as a whole. So unless there are problems that you need to be aware of.
Question on that. Is it the standard operating procedure to do public testimony in both the subcommittee and then again to the full council?
Yeah, and that's sort of a negative, right? Because you can have people who appear in subcommittee and have their say, and then appear before council and say the same thing again because they feel passionate about the item. They're not precluded from doing that. There's no provision in your rules that would preclude them from doing that. I would not recommend that. Again, you're fortunate. I don't want to jinx us, but you don't have abusive people with abusive agendas, you know, and nefarious plans for why they want to yap on about an item, you know, 4 minutes in one place, 4 minutes in the next. So I haven't seen that here.
Steve, excuse me, would all resolutions that have the ability to make a purchase have to go to Finance Committee first?
I think that's really gonna have to depend on the council, Dan. I mean, you know, you guys went to 7, right? And as a town, you, geographically, you're big enough, but population-wise, you're almost too small to be 7, right? And at 7, you're not big enough to have committees, but you're also too small to hear all of the volume of stuff. I think what I would recommend is it's really up to this group. You should be deciding what goes to finance, what goes to safety services. So you kind of get, these provide you with some guidelines. Why don't you play with it a little bit and see what goes there and what makes some sense? One of the things I suggest, and I know that it would, and by the way, Joanne did not buy me a gross of candy to bribe me to say this, but I think it would be enormously helpful if you did licenses once a month. I mean, it allows her office a chance to take a breath. You know, when you're asking her to touch the same license because, you know, you have 5 pieces of outstanding information this week, and 2 weeks you've only got 2, and now you're waiting. They've touched that file 3 times in 6 weeks. That's a lot. That's a lot. And then they've got to issue the licenses. So I think it makes a little more sense to have it be every 30 days. And I know there are going to be some applicants that get a little upset about that, but that's kind of the way the world works in other places. Now, that does not mean that you get into that summer season and somebody says, hey, I want to open up an ice cream shop. What do you mean I can't get in here until August 1st? Right? Because I missed June or whatever. I mean, you guys can kind of deal with that on your own, okay? But I just put that out there for you.
Question. All the municipalities put licensing through their legislative body like this?
Not all of them. Not all of them. You know, my recommendation, okay, as I've had the luxury of working with a good many of you, and I've come to know the rest of you since November. I would suggest, like you've heard a lot about traffic tonight, okay? That stuff really should not clog up your council agenda, okay? That's something that should occur in committee, be decided in committee, come before the full council with the ordinance, you know, that says, hey, we're putting stop signs over here, right? Well, ordinance on that, those are going to be done by ordinance. Oh yeah, oh yeah, yep. Well, but that's a law. That's a law. You need an ordinance.
I just,
I know that excuse me, John, I know that in this town, your charter says that resolutions have the same effect as law and they're continuing. I would not want to rely on that in Superior Court, okay? Generally speaking, resolutions die with the term, okay? You see a lot of financing measures done by resolution. Well, that's because you're spending the money now in the term. That's why you do it. So
when it comes to licensing, it's to me, it's more of an operational situation. It's not a legislative.
Well,
right. It's not a. We're putting this to a legislative body, and it just seems procedural.
It has to be, and I'll tell you why. Because you're granting a right of license to an owner of a business to hold that license and operate in your town, okay? You have the right as the legislative body to revoke that license.
Oh, I agree with that.
Yeah.
And I don't want to lose that.
No, but in the grant, no, I know, but that's why legislatively you have to grant them the license.
So, but who's doing it elsewhere? So, I mean, that's what was my question. Is every city in town, all 39 of them, running all licenses to the legislative body like this? I can't see Providence City Council.
Providence is very different because Providence is so large. I mean, I think they got 20, I don't know, they have 20 council people. I mean, they do. It's a very different construct, and I don't want to lead you down that road. But we've got to figure out what works best for us, you know? I mean, certainly every 30 days, I think, is the way to roll
So
it.
for the stop signs again, is it one general ordinance creating stop signs, or is it each individual stop sign needs?
No, you're gonna hate me on this because the reality is, first of all, we don't have anything.
Yeah.
Okay, I mean, everybody knows that. Hello.
Yeah.
So we're gonna create these buckets by ordinance, right? One ways, two ways, three ways, four ways, crosswalks. We're gonna have to do all of this crap. We don't have it in the code. And then what's gonna happen is when Mr. Copley wants a stop sign on some street, we're gonna have to do it by ordinance because then it slides into the code of ordinance. We don't have a code of resolution.
It's gonna be expensive.
That.
We'll put them off a public notice. Every stop sign has to go off a public notice.
So what I want to say to you is, Councilman LeBlanc's point, well, he wants a stop sign over here. You have to be very judicious in doing this, because if you do one notice for 4 stop signs, you pay once, as opposed to one notice for 1 stop sign, kind of gets expensive. So if we can kind of batch them together, I mean, I've not seen in the last 2 years council people saying, I need this, I don't see that with this group. So when I was a council person, many years ago, when I would resist. So I want a stop sign on my street. I had a lady on my street who wanted her crime watch sign replaced on her pole because it was faded. And I said, that really is not going to help us from getting robbed, you know? And the highway department was upset because they didn't make those in-house and it was expensive and all this other crap. But the bottom line is, the guy who came in after me, he literally put a stop sign on every corner in this one particular neighborhood. And I hate that neighborhood. I avoid it.
Oh, you have a question?
Yes. There's some.
No, what's going to, yes and no, but what I'm going to say to you is the study that's being done, they're going to take a census of these things. So once we have the census,
Stop.
I believe so.
I'll tell you one that
Yeah.
everyone that lives in the
I hate to be the picnic, but we only have like 2 items left on the agenda.
Yeah, no,
We can get back to the rules. If council members, if council members actually have feedback.
Yeah, do you have any other questions
That's what
about the rules at all?
So my feedback I have in hearing from council members at our first meeting with respect to the provisions about the docket generally and the docket preparation and content, because these are rules for this council, I would prefer that it said president and vice president, because the way I operated with Councilman LeBlanc is the same way I operate with now Vice President Verducci, which is when the docket comes to me as a draft, I say, and Joanne asks, is this good to go? I say, I'm good with it if, and in some case I said, I'm good with it if Jamie's good with it, I'm good with it if JP's good with it. And that's the way I like to operate, and that's why I'm comfortable putting that for those 2 provisions, that it's president and vice.
So what page are you on?
1 second. I was losing battery waiting. On page 89, 3 of 10 in the rules, docket generally. So the last sentence, the order of business of any
Got it.
special emergency or other may be determined by the president and vice president. And then same one in docket preparation and content, for the benefit of all, the clerk, with the assistance and approval of the president and vice president, shall prepare.
Okay.
That was all I had. I don't know if anyone else has anything else.
Okay.
Um,
Well, the changes, I'll make the edits and get it back to you guys for, if you want, you can approve it subject to those amendments, and I'll just get the rules out.
yeah, does anyone object to that? Maybe a motion to ratify subject to those amendments?
I'd ask for a motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
As presented, subject to the 2 amendments concerning the documents and the edits that need to be made changing membership from 5.
Okay. Do I hear a motion?
Motion to approve the rules as Solicitor Angell described with those amendments, President, Vice President, approving the agenda where applicable and the rules.
A second.
A motion by Councilman Pasco, a second by Councilman Capaldi. Any further discussion? Clerk, please take the roll.
Councilmember Brown,
Yes.
Councilmember Pasqua.
Yes.
Councilmember Capaldi.
Yes.
Councilmember LeBlanc,
Yes.
Councilmember Copley,
Yes.
Vice President Verducci,
Yes.
President Lima,
Yes.
7 in the affirmative, 0 in the negative, motion passes.
So next is my letter of engagement. I will tell you, for those that were not here before and those that are sick of hearing me, what I meant was on this topic. Lawyers are regulated. Okay, we're regulated by the Office of State Disciplinary Counsel, who works directly for the state Supreme Court. The state Supreme Court regulates lawyers. Okay, the state Supreme Court is steadfast and strident in that lawyers must have a contract or a letter of engagement with their clients, and that those contracts and letters of engagement have to have certain basic elements to them. If you have an ongoing relationship with a client, usually it's a private client, you can augment this. As you can imagine, our fee agreements are built in a way like work orders. We have a general overarching agreement, and then there are subsequent work orders for anything that falls outside of the scope. This agreement falls into 2 scopes, and I'll talk about that as I go through it, and then I'll take your questions. So there's a flat fee scope of services that's described for you, and then there's an hourly scope of services that's described for you. When I came here, there were no letters of engagement on file for any lawyer who ever worked for the town, with the exception of some lawyer who had passed away about 25 years ago. That's no joke. You'll also notice that attached to it is an exhibit of the client's rights and responsibilities that is also required to make the relationship. So this is really formulated in a way to include all of the elements that are required and then to be a bit more descriptive. So I am first picked as the solicitor. Charters pick a solicitor. Well, we all know that we don't do this by ourselves. I have 2 assistants. They are independent contractors. They work directly for me, under contract with me. And obviously we have hired special counsel to assist in other matters. They also work directly for me. As the solicitor, I am responsible for every single legal happening, good, bad, or indifferent, in the town of Coventry. And while we may be insured by the interlocal trust, there are plenty of things that they'll indemnify you for, and many, particularly land use contracts, certain employment matters, that they will not defend you on, nor will they indemnify you for. So you have a solicitor for a variety of reasons. A good part of my time with respect to the trust is managing those cases. You may recall we've been able to save you quite a bit of money in the last 2 years with respect to how those cases have been managed. So we talk about conflicts of interest. I am an independent contractor, as is everybody who performs solicitor work for me with respect to the town. LPL coverage and professional responsibility. I have a duty to inform you if for some reason my licensing status changes. I can tell you that we have a declaration page that is provided to council leadership that evidences our level of insurance. You have to be honest with you, I'm not sure whether we're carrying 1 million, 2 million with a rider, or 2 million, 2 million fly. I don't know, but it's no less than 1 million, 2 million. So that I can tell you. So the scope of engagement, you've seen it there as the flat fee. You've seen it there as the hourly services. to terminate the agreement. Let's talk about that. You know, you can hire by simple majority, but because of the nature of politics, and please, I'm not casting aspersions, okay? You know, I can be hated by any four people in the room at the same time, and there's a reason for that, because, especially me, I call it the way I see it. I don't see red, I don't see blue, and I don't see purple. I see black and white. That's how the law is printed. That can be offensive to people. Truth can be offensive. I'm not here to be offensive. I'm here to be helpful. I'm here to keep the town and my council out of trouble, and to move us forward. If you want to remove me, a supermajority is required. That's in the contract. I think it's important. I will tell you this. First of all, I think you all know me well enough and on a genuine level that I care about the client and I care about this town. I like being here. I've met a lot of nice people here. I know why you live here. I know why you live here. There's a lot of nice people here. But if for some reason this council were to look at me and say, you know what, Steve, we need something else, I'm not going to have a fight over a majority vote, okay? But in the contract, for political reasons, yeah, I think a supermajority makes some sense because it's in the heat of the moment. You know, let's be candid, okay? I walked into a situation with Johnson's Pond that was practically untenable, okay? Nothing had been done to put this town in a position to even remotely solve that problem, okay? We went from being on the bottom of the scrum to being on the top of the scrum. It sure is a nice story, and it sure did feel good before the 4th of July break. But I can tell you, and some of you know right well, the 3.5 months leading up to that was no bowl of cherries. We had experts that were not performing to timeline that I couldn't control. We had a lot of things going on. We had the pressures of the summertime season upon us for yet the 4th year in a row. We had a lease that was terminating. We had a lot of things going on, okay? I don't know that I was in the hot seat, but I needed to win the playoff game. I got it, okay? And we won the game. I told you we'd win the game. You weren't always the best. Some of you weren't always the best passengers, but you allowed me to do my job, and I respect that, okay? And I respect the fact that there was anxiety on that issue. I don't dismiss that, okay? And I understand that. If I could not solve that issue to the satisfaction of the town and the town wanted to move on, I wouldn't have been pleased, but I would have understood, okay? So I just want to avoid the heat of the moment. And by the way, this was in the last agreement, okay? This was in the last agreement. I know that that jumps out at people, and I know, quite frankly, that there are people watching this broadcast tonight who frankly want to stick it up my fanny in another forum because of the supermajority provision. I'll see you Monday. The reality is, okay, this is a contract. The charter says you appoint me. This is a contract. You need a contract. That's how you consume services in the world that we live in today. You know, but I'm happy to take questions on this. I've given you my 2 cents in my presentation. I'm happy to take whatever question you have, Mr. LeBlanc.
Speaking of the supermajority, Town Manager, can you just confirm, I think the only thing in the charter that requires a supermajority is the budget vote? Is that an accurate statement?
My knowledge, that's all I know of.
Okay. And then just a quick question for you. So if we didn't include the supermajority, would you not be interested in furthering the contract?
No.
Okay. I just wanted to clarify those 2 things. Thanks.
I proposed what I thought was appropriate, but this is a discussion. We've been through a lot, Jamie, since November of 2022, so.
Any other discussion? Councilman Pascal.
Yep. Yeah, sure. Yeah, so we, I really make an effort, not to just simply use a prior engagement letter. And there used to be points in time where we would tier the prices of attorneys that did work. Two-year associate would be priced at this level. Next level would be more pricing. A more senior person with expertise would be this pricing. To make it easier for clients, we talk about blended rates, which, no matter how senior or junior you may be, if you touch the file when you charge the client, it's one hourly price. That's generally become a more accepted norm in legal services these days. So that's why I point that out. I point out what the normal rates are so that folks know just what it is. Municipalities are charged a discounted rate on hourly services. I mean, candidly, in private practice, with all due respect, nobody values working for $2.25 an hour. Okay, maybe, I don't know. I don't know what court they're going to, but they're not providing general counsel services, I can assure you. The reason why it's done this way in a government setting is because from this client, we get all your work, okay? Which can be a considerable volume. We're controlling it now with some efficiencies we've created. Did that answer your question? For paraprofessionals. Yep. That's the rate you're charged, $2.25 for the hourly stuff for lawyers. That's correct.
Further discussion?
I can't say it enough. Nobody says thank you enough. I'm pleased to be here. This group, you're doing some great work for your town. I like to be part of that. I'm at a stage in my career where I'm not looking to complicate my client base with people who are nuts, quite frankly, and people who don't want to do good things and are looking to play hide the ball and break the law and all sorts of other crap. I like being here because for those that golf, I suppose there's an analogy for fishing. If you like to use every club in your bag, being general counsel is a great position to do that if you can hit every club in your bag. And I've been around a little bit, and I can hit my clubs. I think I've hit my clubs pretty well for you in the last couple of years, and I'd like to continue to do that. I can tell you that I don't do it alone, okay? I have, and I don't get, and I'm going to tell you something, for strategic reasons and business reasons, I don't get into staffing. I don't. Rhode Island's a very small state, okay? Jealousy is a wonderful thing. People love to try to eat your supper when you're not looking, okay? So I don't get into staffing. But I can tell you that I have 9 direct reports that work for me, okay? We have subcontractors. One of the things that I've done here in key positions is bring in independent contractors who work directly for me. And so that if I do not like their performance and that person needs to be changed, I will change them. There was an instance in the last term that very quietly I had brought in an independent contractor. There were things that I was not satisfied with that also created some complications for me in a business sense that I needn't get into in public. I didn't care. It was time to move on. Okay, it was what was in the best interest of this client. And that's why I do it that way. I am unafraid to make those kinds of changes. There were changes made in the pond litigation during the litigation. There were changes made in the Center of New England litigation, okay? I got to make the call on the field. I've been allowed to do that here. I'm grateful for it, but I want you to understand that my primary concern is to provide you with the best possible service that we can. That sounds very arrogant, okay? we take a lot of pride in our work, and I'm a very demanding person to work for. I don't demand any more of someone else that works with me than I demand of myself. I think you see that in how I go about things. That's not to say that we won't make mistakes. We do. Okay? That's not to say that we won't have disagreements. Let's sit down. I don't know of anybody in this room that doesn't drink coffee. Do you drink coffee, Scott? Yeah, I know. There was the water. I've never seen you with a cup of coffee. That's why I went right to you. But everybody else drinks coffee, okay? So we'll drink water. But if we have a disagreement, let's sit down, okay? I mean, there isn't anything that we can't work through together, okay? So unless you want to break the law or do something unethical, and then we won't be friends and help you there, which I don't suspect with this group. But anyway, any questions for me on this?
There's no other discussion. Are you looking for a motion to approve or ratify the?
You need, well, the motion is, in this case, to approve the contract and to authorize the council president to sign it, and then it will be placed on file.
Right. Do we have a motion to approve the contract and authorize signature by the council president?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Council.
Second.
Second by Councilman Copley. Any discussion? Clerk, please take the roll.
Councilmember Brown,
Yes.
Councilmember Pasqua.
Yes.
Councilmember Capaldi,
Yes.
Councilmember LeBlanc,
Yes.
Councilmember Copley,
Yes.
Vice President Verducci,
Yes.
President Lima,
Yes.
7 in the affirmative, 0 in the negative, motion passes.
Can I ask a question? Cody, could we-
Well, I have to,
You can,
Yeah.
I just say that because everybody's comfortable, everybody's got their papers. So if we can go into executive session, have him shut down the outside world, and then have our discussion, nobody has to move. Is that okay? I know I'm long-winded. I'm
Well-
make up for that. But you won't say you don't get information from
let me just do public comment for undocketed first, if you want to pull up Zoom, Cody. We'll now go to public comment for undocketed items. Raise your hand. Going once, twice, 3 times. Public comment is now closed. Moving to executive session. Vote to, do I hear a motion to go into executive session for the following? Closed session pursuant to Rhode Island General Law, Section 42-46-5A2 for litigation matters, read discussion of prospective litigation to be initiated against the town. Do I hear a motion?
Motion.
Motion by Councilwoman Capaldi,
Second.
second by Vice President Verducci. Roll call, Councilman Brown,
Yes.
Councilman Pasqua, Councilman Capaldi,
Yes.
Councilman LeBlanc,
Yes.
Councilman Copley,
Yes.
Vice President Verducci.
Yes.
President Lima, yes. We'll now go into executive session.
So
I'll take a motion to come out of executive session.
Take the motion.
I'll second it.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Clerk?
Councilmember Brown,
Yes.
Councilmember Pasqua, Councilmember Capaldi.
Yes.
Councilmember LeBlanc,
Yes.
Councilmember Copley,
Yes.
Vice President Verducci.
Yes.
Lima,
Yes.
7 in the affirmative, 0 in the negative, motion passes.
Could I have a motion to seal the minutes of executive session?
Take the motion.
Motion and second. Clerk?
Councilmember Brown,
Yes.
Councilmember Pasqua,
Seal them up.
Councilmember Capaldi,
Yes.
Councilmember LeBlanc,
Yes.
Councilmember Copley,
Yes.
Vice President Verducci,
Yes.
Lima,
Yes.
7 in the affirmative, 0 in the negative, motion passes.
Members of the public, the council met in executive session to discuss one item listed on our agenda. A discussion was had, no votes were taken. At this time, I'll take a motion to adjourn at 9:33 PM.
Take the motion.
Motion
Second.
and a second. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
The chair votes aye. We stand adjourned.